breathing for the life I once tried to find, 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 once tried to find.
What's up, everybody? How you guys doing tonight? Let's get started. Let's get started. How's everybody doing in the chat? Y'all doing good? So we're going to have a more chill stream tonight. It's not going to be 5 hours long. Obviously, it's Sunday night. So, you know what I'm saying? I can't be here for that long. But I wanted to have a short, chill, educational stream. Obviously, I'm still going to be taking questions. So you guys want to have any questions in the chat, go ahead and do that. Doing fine. That's good to hear, man. It's good to hear. What's up, Red Dondonian? What's up, Man of Steel? The reason I wanted to do this stream in particular is because I know I promised I was going to have a little short stream about class, because I think this is something that is continually misunderstood in America and Britain and other English-speaking countries, as far as I'm concerned. Countries where the language I can understand, specifically in the West. Doesn't seem like people have a good understanding of what class is. And if you're active on a shithole site called Twitter, there's all sorts of debates. What's up, Bruno? Glad to see you here, man. There's all sorts of stupid fucking debates that are going on about class reductionism versus identity politics, race versus class, and then, worst of all, you have intersectionality. And intersectionality is not really something I've seen Marxists, even the ones I would consider myself sympathetic to, really address and be able to, overcome. It seems like implicitly everybody's a kind of intersectional. So, well, class is important, but other things are important too. It's a really undialectical view because it doesn't situate what class is. By the way, guys, if you're not following me, don't be scared to say so in the chat, because I want to make this as accessible and understandable as it. What's up, Ewoks? Glad to see you, man. I can't wait for our collab on Friday. Right? Was it Friday or Saturday? But it's going to be lit, guys. Me and us and Ewok, Infrared and Ewok, we're going to collab probably on a live stream. It's going to be lit as fuck. So I hope to see you guys there. It's going to be Friday, I think. Yeah, we're going to have a really interesting discussion. And it's going to be sick. What's up, Temujin? Glad to see you here. It's going to be good. Yeah, man. It's going to be sick as fuck. Friday, yeah. It sounds mint. I don't know what that means. But Friday, yeah. I remember it was Friday. Friday is so Saturday for me. Why is that? But anyway, yeah, we're going to, as I was saying, I want to have this talk about class, because it seems to me even a lot of Marxist-Leninists in the Anglospheres, English-speaking Marxist-Leninists, tend to take... I've seen, for example, I don't want to call anybody out. I'm not someone out to start drama or nothing. I'm not that type of person. We just went off on the LARP Lords. So that's a warm-up. Yeah, it's really refreshing to anticipate the fact that we're entering an era... You live in New Zealand? Okay, that makes sense then. Yeah, it's really refreshing to anticipate the fact that we're approaching an era in which Marxism-Leninism isn't any longer going to be associated with LARPing. Because believe it or not, guys, for a long time it actually was. For a long time, Marxism-Leninism was just a form of LARP, but we're entering a new type of era in which tankies mean something else entirely. But anyway, yeah, I've seen videos. Let me just say it, they're not starting drama. I don't have a problem with the person. But the guy named Hugo Pink, I've seen one of his videos. I'm not too familiar with the guy, but as I was watching one of his videos, he said something that is repeated often on BreadTube, and I was kind of surprised to see him say it. He said he implied basically that class was defined by your ability to fire people and the power you have in the workplace and the ability to have that kind of control. Well, actually, that's not a materialistic definition or view of class. That's actually a political definition of class, right? Politics is about what? Politics is a thing that's about sovereignty and power and control and all that kind of stuff. And we've been seeing in the West that there's this influx of, I think Caleb calls it postmodernism. It kind of traces to a French thinker called Foucault, who replaced the Marxist class analysis, the materialistic analysis, with an analysis that was fixated on power and relationships of power. And power was the supreme thing. Not material relations of production, but power, control, domination, and so on and so on. So it's kind of concerning to see that there's Marxist-Leninists out there, or people adjacent to our tanky sphere, who are kind of concurring with that Americanization of the class analysis. Class is actually not defined by the power you have in the workplace and your ability to influence decision making and all that kind of stuff. That's more of a political and cultural type of thing. It has actually nothing to do with, well, everything has something to do with everything. That's a dialectical view. But that's actually not how Marxists in the past have defined or understood what class is. Class is not political, it's economic. You can talk about the political and cultural implications of that, that's fine. And among those, maybe include the tremendous, deciding power that bosses have over workers, but that's actually not what defines what the class is. Yeah, you hear some more populist right conservatives like Sagar Enjeti, I don't know who that is, talking about the managerial elite. Well, that is a thing, don't get me wrong, but it's not necessarily the same thing technically as the class as Marx was understanding it. But you can easily see that there is a professional managerial elite that can be understood as a definite social formation in our society. But it's not technically what a class is in Marxism. And what a class is, I'm going to get to really quick. And it's so simple, guys, it's going to blow your mind. Trying to vaguely sound like they're talking about class when the managers still work for Capital 2. Ewok, that's a very interesting point, because according to the dogmatic West Marxist view, actually CEOs are the working class because they don't actually technically own the means of production. They too are employees who are hired. I've seen that as a libertarian talking point, and people tend to just dismiss it as that, but I haven't seen a good response to that argument, and it's actually a completely valid argument. But it doesn't necessarily mean that there's no difference between CEOs and the average Joe in America. What it means is that Western Marxists need to go back to the basics and really reevaluate what they're taking for granted, because the way they've responded to that is by saying, well, CEOs have more power. But actually, power is not what defines classes and class relations. Neat. Isn't the political power reflected in the material? Well, traditionally, isn't it the opposite, Neat? Isn't it that the political is actually what reflects the material, that the material is actually what's primary? I think a lot of that relationship, the whole base and superstructure analogy is a little bit confused, and there's a lot of things wrong with it. But it's better than if you were to say the reverse, that political power is what determines class. Sagar and Jedi is the co-host of The Hill. Oh, I like The Hill people, actually. I like Sagar and, what's her name? Crystal Ball. Yeah, I like both of them. I don't have a problem with them. Yeah, exactly, because the managers don't own the means either. Exactly. I even meant like Foucault and Frankfurt School have some weird psychosexual analysis. Yeah, not getting down that rabbit hole because we don't really have time to the psychoanalysis thing, but specifically, you can still have a coherent understanding of the social differences and the class struggle in the United States between the professional managerials and the people, but you need to get your theory correct first, and then it'll be all clear what we're dealing with. What is a peasantry? What is the proletariat? What is the people, the populist people, right? What is the professional managerial class? What is the metropolitan petite bourgeoisie? Why is there somehow a difference between city proletariat and rural proletariat? You know what I'm saying? So this is really something that's multi-dimensional that we're dealing with, but if we can square off a correct understanding of class, it'll enable us to make sense of all of these other really complicated things, including what's addressed by so-called intersectionality, which is race. Well, what about race? Isn't race just as important as class? But they're different things is the thing. You have to understand what class is first, and then it'll be clear why there's a racial antagonism and all this kind of stuff, anti-imperialism and so on and so on. Yeah, I read Sagar and Crystal's book and thought it was good for people that are new to moving towards dissident politics. I'm especially really delighted and glad to see Jimmy Dore's recent video where I didn't watch the whole video, so don't quote me on this, but where he was talking about there's that militia guy, and he said, I'd rather have the people who have guns be pro Black Lives Matter than be against. And he was basically saying that these militia type people, maybe they have a potential And I like that Jimmy Dore, he's stepping outside of the so-called progressive box, and he's realizing we're entering a new era of politics in the United States. So I was really glad to see that direction Jimmy Dore is headed in. I think Sagar and Crystal are kind of on the same page. What's up, Papichulo? Glad to see you back. How you doing? Agreed. We need to understand the base before we get into the superstructure. Exactly. I want to just have a simple understanding what is class, and then allow us to have a more nuanced and ability to apply it, and everything will be very simple when we have this. So the first thing I want to do, yeah, it's straight up great to reach out to other people like that Jimmy is doing. Yeah, I mean, I think we're all here at the Infrared Show. We're all big fans of Jimmy Dore. So, yeah, there's that. But, so let's get straight to it, okay? The first thing I want to do is I want to give you guys a brief historical background about the origin of the significance of class, specifically in the 19th century, okay? So the first thing I want to ask the chat, and everyone, you can share what you think, but I want to get this ball rolling by having you guys think about this. Why is it that something called class as a concept, the concept of class, why would this enter into significance? Now, for almost all of recorded human history, I say recorded, emphasis on recorded, Jimmy and Caleb Maupin got shit on so much for doing so much more. Yeah, I mean, Jimmy and Caleb are definitely doing good work. The Boog Boys are anti-racist and willing to fight for what they believe. Their thing is that don't differentiate from a bourgeois state and a proletariat. Well, yeah, they're not Marxists, but the main thing, and I'm going to kind of get to this, is this question of you have a white supremacy either way. So Vosh is the person who says, let's side with the white supremacist state and the institutions because those are formally make him feel like a safe space, as opposed to the rebellious, toxic masses. But the Marxist and materialist view would be that that state actually comes from the masses. So if there's any hope whatsoever, it's going to come from those masses. If you want to have a reset and you want to overcome white supremacy, you don't side with the establishment, you don't side with the city white people, you're going to side with the rural white people, because the rural white people are the material foundation, and racism and all that kind of stuff is a kind of superstructural thing, right? So if you go to the origin and source, maybe they're racist or toxic and all this stuff, but at least they have the potential to generate something new. And that's always been the Marxist view since Lenin, at least. But I would also argue it was Marx's view as well, but it's just kind of been hushed up and de-emphasized. Jimmy beating Stalin's high score door. Yeah, facts. Did you see Jimmy tear apart the trot? Ah, no, I didn't see that. Maybe we'll react to it later. I would love to actually watch that. I really want to watch that. He posted up facts and base. I don't know how to enable links in the chat, so links in the chat don't work. Go ahead to our Twitter and link it to my Twitter and my DMs, and we'll watch it later. In infrared, if you could see. What's up, Quindy? Glad to see you here. Quindy's been here from the start. From the very beginning. They commented on our video. Glad to see you here, man. Class solitude. Oh, it was like 40. I saw that. I actually just saw that. Yeah. I'm going to check it out. But anyway, what I was talking about is, in the 19th century, why is it that something like class became a concept? Because for all of mankind's recorded history, there's always been observable social differentiations. There's been different castes, there's been feudalism, obviously, but even before feudalism, there's different ranks, there's nobles, there's slaves, there's all sorts of social distinctions that existed before industrial capitalism. But only with Marxism do we have a general concept of class. So what I want to get the ball rolling and have you guys think about is, what is the origin of the concept of class? Why do we have a concept of class in general? And guys, comment if you can't really follow, if this is too complicated. I'll try to, I want to work with you guys. I just want to, make this educational, make this fruitful for everybody. And there's not enough of us for me not to justify being able to help everyone. So literally everyone in the chat, I'm going to be able to help you understand this, okay? If we have 200 viewers, it's going to be tough. But for now, we don't have that many viewers. So I'm really going to be able to work with you and help you. So if you just bear with me here, you know. So I have my theories, but I think the assumption of liberalism's class abolition at face value is just flawed. Well, the concept of class is what we're focusing. What is the origin of the concept of class? There are explicit class distinctions, not as hard as in feudalism. Well, in feudalism, 200 viewers in no time. Appreciate that, Tova. We really think so too. We think 250 viewers. You're gonna eventually see 250 viewers below, and we're anticipating it and we're ready for it. That's what I worried about. It'd be rad to have 200 views, but at the same time, I feel like 50 easier to read all the chats. That is a trade-off, but at the same time, I'm sure there's going to be a way to, I'm going to remember you guys, so I'm going to remember you guys. At least I will. I think everyone else in our group will as well. We're going to remember you guys, so when we have 200 viewers, your comments are probably going to get priority, because you've been here from the start, and we trust you. We know you're not trolls, and you're not, just fucking with us. I'll be back to make some lunch. Sweet spot is 80, 90 people. Even that would be great, but we think we can. We're not worrying about views that much right now. Right now we just want to just get ourselves out there. Hey, Infrared, do you think one of the problems of Western MLs don't put much emphasis on Marxist theories of alienation? I can get to that. I'm not sure how much I can get to it this stream. This stream is mainly going to be about class. And the question I'm throwing out there for you guys to think about is, what is the origin of the concept of class? Because the general concept of class has its origin with Marx, or not necessarily Marx, but in the 19th century. Before the 19th century, there were castes and social distinctions of all sorts in all civilizations. But there was never a general concept of a class. If you wanted to talk about class, you were going to be talking about particular classes. If you lived in the feudalism, right, you're talking about knights and nobles and all that kind of bullshit, and you're just talking about the particular classes. You're not talking about class in general. So the thing we want to think about is, how did class in general arise, okay? That's the most important thing that has to be interrogated if we want to arrive at a good understanding of class where we are right now. Just have to police the chat until it gets too big. Twitch streamers mod chats of one. Yeah, I mean, we'll have mods and all that kind of stuff too. We're not really worried about it. Yeah, all rest too. We're gonna remember who was kicked. Exactly. Yeah, we're all gonna remember who was here from the start. The people here from the start, the OGs, they're always gonna get priority in the future. Got you. Yo, okay, that's not for me. The theory of class appeared when it needed to. What's up, Mr. D? Glad to see you here. When the old class structure broke down and people needed to describe. But Mr. D, here's the problem with that, is that class structures have always been broken down and rebuilt and so on across the history of humanity, So that was nothing new. That specifically was nothing new. The ancients did have a concept of social distinctions as a general rule, though. Right, but class in general, right? Class in the abstract, in the sense of Marxism, specifically as it concerns material relations of production and not just explicit political distinctions and rank and so on and so on. So that's the question we have to ask. Answer: perhaps production became a social act, as Engels said. But I would argue, and I think Marx and Engels would argue the same thing, is that production was always social. I mean, from the very beginning of humanity, it was social. The difference between kings, freemen, slaves, merchants, and priests. Right, there had always been class distinctions, but a general theory and concept of class is something modern. Society as a whole is more and more splitting up to two great hostile camps. Neat's hitting on the money here. Neat is the one hitting on the money here, I think. He's quoting, society as a whole is more and more splitting up into two great hostile camps. Two classes directly facing each other. There's something really significant about that, okay? Two, okay? Just two. In the history of mankind, there is all sorts of social distinctions. Clearly, in our society, there's all sorts of different kinds of social distinctions. But in the modern era, as was described by Marx and Engels, society is splitting up into two great hostile camps. Only two, okay? So we're gonna go ahead and unravel this in a dialectic way. Gonna explain this in a dialectic way. Base neat. we're going to get to it. Okay, I'm just going to cut to the chase. The reason why there arose a general concept of class is because of this. It's very simple. Almost for the first time, because the differences are implicit, not explicit under liberalism, where classes are not natural distinctions, but the question is why, right? And I'm going to try to get to that. What's up, Leonard? I think this is the first time seeing you here. Glad to see you here, man. I'm great, chilling with Rice Gang, watching Aki Infrared preach the word. Thanks, Pujab. Appreciate it. Large portions of the population became more involved in, but I think that's always been the case, Cosmonaut. They've always been involved, the Silk Road and so on. Mode of production. Share this stream around. I appreciate it, man. It is a Sunday night. We're not expecting crazy views, but it's enough to be able to, just talk to you guys about this. This isn't going to be like a 5-hour stream, but I want you guys to take something away and get something out of this. Hey, comrade. Okay, see you later, Ewoks. I'm going to see you Friday with that collab. Looking forward to it, man. It's going to be great. Watch the rest tomorrow if it's still up. Yeah, we might keep it up, actually. We might keep it up because I'm a little less embarrassing this stream. Thank you, man. Greetings from Mexico. Oh, that's great to hear, man. We have a guy from Mexico in our group. His name is Jorge. You've probably seen him if you watched our previous videos. The reason a general concept of class came into being and arose was because the concept of the modern nation state. Okay, let me just get to it first. It was because of the French revolutions, okay, which was itself the culmination of a certain history. The French revolutions, destruction of official distinctions in the sphere of the state and politics, meaning the French Revolution destroyed all state and politically recognized social distinctions. After the French Revolution, from the perspective of the state and the law, everyone was equal. It's what they call bourgeois or formal equality. Some people might object that there still existed discrimination, maybe against minorities or but ultimately, within the polity, the French polity, if you're a citizen of the French polity, you are an equal, okay? And quite explicitly, this is actually a form of what they call neoclassicism, okay? Classicism, which began in the Renaissance and was developed through, specifically cultivated as an aesthetic trend and also another kind of trend in England. Remember, the British Empire, I'm kind of schizo all over the place, bear with me here. The British Empire was looking toward Rome, the Roman Empire, as it was considering itself the heir of the Roman Empire, okay? And the cultural, the culture of the French Revolution was very influenced by this history of looking back to ancient Rome as the golden age that was lost from the Middle Ages. So this began in the Renaissance, basically, okay? And within the Roman and Greek, whatever polities, right, there was this formal equality before the law for citizens. The meaning of a republic, okay, a republic, meant some type of way in which the state recognized everyone, gave everyone political recognition, and premised all members of a polity, okay, as the responsible and civil participants of the state, okay? I'll keep this stream unlisted if you do it on book. Yeah, we might just do that. Before then, the state was basically the king as a glorified warlord. Eugenics, I actually think that hasn't changed. I'll get to that. Howdy, Schizo ML gang? Yeah. The disintegration of hereditary rule. Not specifically. The essential thing is the French Revolution's complete destruction of distinctions, okay? This politically recognized distinctions in citizenship. There was just the citizen who's a member of the republic. And this is a neoclassical type of politics, hearkening back to the days of ancient Rome and ancient Greece, specifically ancient Rome, okay? There's that famous picture of the French Revolution. I can't show it on stream right now. Maybe I can, but I don't know if it's worth it. Of the oath of the I'm sorry, I can't pronounce it, Horatii or whatever, where they're giving that kind of Roman salute. And this was an iconic picture of the French Revolution, okay? So it's the French Revolution that made possible a general understanding of class. Why? Because in the French Revolution, right, there arose a concept of the citizen, okay? This, I'm here. What's up? What's up, Pride to Loons, aka Afro Lines? Glad to see you here, man. I think you were here for our first or second stream, but it's really glad to see you here back, man. Afro Line. I'll just call you Afro Line because your name's really long. But anyway, yeah, the French Revolution is why there arose a general concept of class. Because to put a long story short, guys, after the formal equality of the French Revolution, which made everyone a citizen, okay, who was a part of the polity, the political polity, a citizen of the republic, it could still be observed that there were some kind of social distinction, okay? Some kind of social distinction, some essential social distinction can be observed. Let me go further with this. After the Restoration, if you guys know about that, because I don't want to take anything for granted, after the Restoration, right, and after the defeat of Napoleon, the French monarchy was restored. So the French Revolution became a distant ideal for Europe's intellectuals and thinkers, and the way in which they were responding to their contemporary injustices and antagonisms was looking back to the good old ideals of the French Revolution, namely responding to the injustices and inequalities and all that of the ancien regime and the restored order by Metternich or whatever, was basically looking toward this equality, formal equality, as the model of the future. We want to be equal citizens, no more lords, no more nobles. That was basically the trend, right? Socialism before socialism, more or less. Okay, I'm simplifying a lot of things, but yeah. Imagine not liking. Yeah, it's crazy. We have 15 likes. That's half the viewers. I think that's the most we've ever had. So you guys are breaking records here. We appreciate it, guys. Appreciate all the likes. But anyway, so back to my train of thought. I'm sorry, I don't want to get too distracted. Basically, the people were looking at the French Revolution as a way, Jesus, 17, even more than half, proto-socialism, Tova, in the sense that people who would later become socialist intellectuals were first, for example, the English Romantics, they were first looking at the ideals of the French Revolution as basically the way in which they were making sense of the world. Basically, the ideals of the French Revolution, right? The neoclassicism of the French Revolution, this return to republican equality, republican virtue. This was basically the way in which people were expressing this deeper aspiration for some kind of social equality. Tell me if that still doesn't make sense to you, and I'll work with you. You know, I want everybody to be able to understand what I'm trying to say here. And like I said, there's few of you in the chat, so I can work with everyone. You know, so Moppin is live right now. I don't want to take away from him, but we already started, and yeah, I think he already has a lot of viewers anyway. But what the fuck, someone disliked? Yeah, usually about 2-3 people come to our stream and dislike our stream, but they're too much of cowards to ever say anything in the chat. And I've only had one hostile person ever in this chat, and it's just how cowardly people are. They're gonna report us, they're gonna dislike us, because basically they're pussies and they're not gonna actually say anything because they know I'm gonna directly address them, you know, live right here. But yes, we do have haters. We do have dislikers, and I'm just not going to focus on them, you know? I'm here for infrared. I appreciate that, Afro Line. We really appreciate it. I tried to be, you know, I don't want to, you know, go live too often when other people are live. Like, if Caleb's already live, I probably won't click the live button, just personally. I just dislike to mess with you. Okay, thanks, Neat. Appreciate it. But there is, you know, at least, unless you have 3 accounts, there's at least one hater we have. I didn't care what people would be hating on you now. Well, I've brought it on us. You know, all that shit talking I was having about BreadTube and stuff. There's bound and Anglos. There's bound to be people who just don't like us. Another thing is that we're very heterodox in our approach to Marxism, and it's very controversial stuff. I don't know if you guys know this, but we said in our recent video, and I've made the argument several times, and I'm going to devote a stream to this maybe, that we live in socialism. And that's something that just people really have a hard time, you know. That's something that almost triggers a lot of people. It even triggers people, I think, in our own group. Anti-Anglo action is super necessary, yeah. But let's get back to this main point, okay? The main point is that after the Restoration, the intellectuals of Europe, the people who were thinking of higher ideals to respond to society's ailments, they were looking at the French Revolution, they were looking at the republican equality of the citizen as basically the way to respond to society's ills, society's problems. Okay? But so the reason I'm bringing that up is because it's not just that they could observe that social distinctions persisted in spite of the fact that everyone was equal formally. Because even before everyone was formally equal, again, because you have to bear in mind that the French Republic came to an end and the monarchy was restored, people came to the realization, I forget who the author was, but this is the guy who actually brought into being the term proletariat. This is the origin of the term the proletariat. The reason is people could put two and two together about the fact that even on this very abstract level, and this intellectual abstract level, you could deduce arithmetically, right, that even if we are all equal politically, there is some kind of contradiction, some kind of paradox that persists. Nietzsche brought this up with the quote, in society there seem to be two great classes forming. I forget the exact quote, maybe he can quote it again. We live in socialism, can you clarify? Red Dundonian, I think I will. If I have time this stream, I'm going to clarify it. But I want us to be on the same page about class first. So let's see how fast I can get through this, and then I'm going to talk about the socialism thing. And I actually might be able to loop it in because they're actually related. I want you guys to bear in mind this is a and I'm going to just be honest with you guys. There you go. Nate just he just linked the quote again. Society as a whole is more and more splitting up into two great hostile camps, into two great classes directly facing each other. Malik Shah, glad to see you, man. What's up, man? Glad to have you here. Yeah, Nietzsche, he shared it into the chat, and basically that's what we're talking about here. That's the paradox, the antagonism that you could even deduce and arrive at on this abstract intellectual level. If you held as an ideal that the key to society, to solving or responding to society's ailments lies in the republican equality of the citizen, you could even deduce in your head why it is that society would split up into two great hostile camps, two great classes directly facing each other. Actually, this is what was happening in England. In England, even before the reforms that would basically create some measure of common social equality, as far as the state was concerned, right? That everyone's a citizen with equal rights and so on and so on. The universal suffrage and all those kinds of things. People could perceive that republican equality of the citizen was not going to be able to respond to this deeper type of antagonism that was happening in society. So guys, pay attention to the quote Nietzsche just shared, okay? And I want to, I wish... Our streams are not that high quality yet, guys, so I'm not able to pull quotes and show you guys things like how we do on our video, but I'm going to get to a point where we're going to be able to do that, basically. But I get we're already living in socialism point. You're referencing the different times socialism. It's not just that Punjab. It's actually a more subtle point that I might be able to get to here, which is that I think we need to have a political economy of socialism, right? And I'm going to get to what that means. But trust me, just don't worry about that issue yet. I just brought it as an example that the approach I'm going off of right now, guys, and I'm just going to take a moment to observe this, guys. 24 likes and 30 viewers. Isn't that fucking crazy? We've never had that many likes, I don't think. And the proportion of likes to viewers is insane. We appreciate that so much, guys. You're breaking records here. We've never had that. The Falcon General, what's up, man? Glad to see you back. Glad to see you here. 25, that's fucking crazy. 25 likes and 30 viewers. That is crazy. You're breaking records, guys. Every single one of you is based here. And none of you are bots either. I always wonder if some viewers are bots, but it seems like everybody's engaged. Everybody's here. Everybody's paying attention. We're all on the tanky train. We're all watching. We're all in this infrared thing. We're all gonna rise together. Like I said before, a rising tide lifts all boats. Bread tube is going down. But let's have this educational stream. Oh, someone took away their like. That's okay. I forgive you. Let's let's have this educational stream though, just so because I want you guys to be able to take something away from this. Jorge's joining. Awesome. Needs is clearly an algorithm. Yeah. Rice up. Jorge's still connecting, I think. Well, I don't know. We're all riding the tanky train. Okay? Bear with me. It's a Sunday night. Okay. You guys know where I left off, though? So we're talking about the fact that the French Revolutionary Republican equality was not able...
Hello to everyone.
What's up, Jorge? Jorge, there's really bad feedback, I think, coming from your side. You say you aren't an anarchist, but you want to smash that like button. I mean, you guys, if you don't want to like, that's completely fine. It's enough for you guys to be able to take something away from this, right? I just want to put something out there for you guys. And bear with me, guys, if any of this is confusing or you want me to clarify it a little bit more, because I do have time for every single one of you. We have such few viewers right now that I can actually help each and every one of you. Fuck tankies, all my guys are tractories. That doesn't have the same ring to it whatsoever, Neat. Quick side question, how many of us love Thompson? I actually didn't. Jorge has bad lighting. Well, I just ask you to forgive him then. India Tractor Gang. Hold up a bowl of rice to show support. I might be able to do that soon. I have food coming, and it's expected... Oh, it's not here yet. Okay, that's fine. Lefty Pull is far from perfect, but it's exposure to some part of what socialism and communism actually entailed. I've never been on that site. I'm not familiar with that site. I mean, I've seen it before, but I've never like posted on it and been active on it. So I'm not that familiar with Lefty Pull. Yeah, nice rices in the chat, guys. But anyway, getting back to class, as far as what class is. Can someone in chat tell me what happened? It's a podcast, right? Jorge needs to get a ring light. I don't have a ring light, so I think, yeah, I don't think it's that important. But,
Sorry, it's the only thing I can do. The other possibility is this. So, it's literally the only thing I can do.
Yeah, guys, I don't think it's that bad, honestly. But anyway, yeah, getting back to what I was saying about class, I got some PDFs from all those sites are sharing really cool stuff. And another thing is, since you mentioned PDFs, shout out to Sci-Hub. I think we're all really big fans of Sci-Hub here. I don't know how can I support Sci-Hub. Donate to Sci-Hub if you can, guys. It's one of the only causes on the internet I actually believe in is Sci-Hub. I fucking love the people over at Sci-Hub, and I'm so grateful to them. But anyway, getting back to this point about class, okay? Formal political equality was I need you guys to bear this in mind. Formal political equality is the premise of having a concept of class. This is what makes possible a concept of class, and it's also something you need to presuppose in order to have a concept of class. So, I don't know if I should open up MS Paint, but again, guys, if you're not able to follow this, just let me know in the chat. This is how it is, basically. You have a polity or a nation of some kind. Let's say France. Everyone is an equal citizen, okay? You have to presuppose this first in order for the essence of class to reveal itself as what Nietzsche described as society splitting up into two great camps. Now, England didn't have formal political equality, and England was the quintessential example of this splitting up into two camps. But it was taken as an article of proof for the romantic ideologists of the French Revolution that, in fact, formal political equality is not actually enough to address or solve this paradox. And in fact, it's the very premise of this paradox, okay? When we are all equal, when we're all politically equal, so to speak, that's actually when class reveals itself, okay? Political equality is what reveals the essence of class. And now I'm going to get to what is class, right? Finally, what this whole stream is about. I'm going to give you a coherent and extremely simple understanding of what class is. Ready? In fact, abstractly and intellectually speaking, I want you guys to open up a hypothetical bubble in your head. I'm not asking you to accept this wholesale and apply it to every single, just a hypothetical bubble in your head. You can think about it in this way is what I'm trying to say. There are actually only two real classes. There are only two real classes. Did you know that we have 6 or 7 communist countries if you count China, but the 6th or 7th are Nepal? And interesting. But guys, this is what I wanted to get to. There are actually, in fact, only two classes. Okay? There are only actually two real classes. Okay? And the classes, these two classes, are the result of formal political equality. Formal political equality, specifically as it's relevant to the sphere of exchange, the exchange of goods. Okay, the exchange of goods. Why is this? Why does the formal political equality that allows all of us to exchange goods as equals and enter into relationships contractually rather than based on tradition or bondage or slavery or serfdom or whatever you want to call it? Yes, the bourgeoisie and the proletariat are in fact the only two classes. If we take class, if we're talking about the essence of what class is, there's only two classes. And the presupposition of class, the only way we can arrive at the true essence of class is if we in our heads, even hypothetically as a thought experiment, just assume that everyone is politically equal. Assume that everyone is equal and is free to enter into contractual exchanges with one another rather than exchanges and association that's based in tradition or based in bondage, some kind of forced bondage like serfdom. Okay? This is where we see class. This is where class makes itself evident. And this is the reason why, okay? The reason why is very simple. Inevitably, when we're all equal actors selling our goods, there's one good that also needs to be sold, okay? And you know this as labor. But why is that significant? Why does this create such a paradox? Why does this create such an antagonism? Why is it such an antagonism that on the one hand, goods are sold, physical things are sold and exchanged and brought onto the market, and on the other hand, labor is? Why is labor such an important exception? It's very simple. It's a very simple type of arithmetic. It's a very simple, you don't need anything complicated to think about why labor is so significant. Ready? Because for all the goods that are going to be exchanged in the market, labor is the condition of possibility of those goods. Labor, abstractly defined, just means the thing that is the source of all those goods. So the paradox of labor as something that becomes sold as a good, similar in the way that you would sell rice and beans and fucking bread and I don't know what else, you'd be a craftsman selling jewels and pottery or whatever you want. The reason why it's so paradoxical that labor itself becomes sold as just another good is because labor is actually the source of all goods. Labor in the abstract. And this is formally true. This is even formally true. When you're paid for you're paid for your labor abstractly in wages, in money, okay? You're paid for your labor abstractly. So this is even formally true, okay? This is the source of class, okay? Because some people must primarily sell their own labor, okay? Not only their own labor, but labor in general, which they participate in, because remember, labor is social. Some people, the majority of people, at least if we presuppose this pure equality of citizens, some people are going to be selling labor itself, labor which is the source of goods, and some people will only sell goods, okay? Some people will sell goods and buy labor in order to produce goods, and some people will only be able to sell labor itself. That is the proletariat and the bourgeoisie. You can think of the fact that there's only two classes in this very simple sense. One class has to sell labor, another class sells the product of labor. One class sells labor, one class sells the product of labor. Labor, very simply, refers to the human and social conditions of possibility of the product. This is why it's so paradoxical. I will sell you a jacket, which is the example Marx likes to use in Capital. I will sell you a jacket which crystallizes a certain amount of labor. Some people will sell the labor itself that makes the jacket possible. The conditions of the possibility of products are social and human in nature, okay? They don't come from nowhere. With the whole question of automation, that's become more complicated, and I'll get to that. But I just want us to all be on the same page about this. Enver Hoxha, okay, based, I guess. So far, there's 24 likes, which is crazy. 29 viewers and 24 likes. That means only 5 people haven't liked it. That is a crazy proportion. So far, is the chat following me on this, or is there something? Should I elaborate more, or are you following me, or how have I been doing as far as the presentation is concerned? Because I want to be able to, I want to be able to address everybody's confusion. You're following? Great to hear, Tova. Great to hear. It's quick, because if everybody's following, we can expand it. We can go even further in this rabbit hole. Following? Very digestible. I'm glad to hear that. Some feedback I always get is that I'm very incomprehensible. I'm schizophrenic and I don't ever make sense. So I'm really glad to hear you guys be able to understand this. I'm listening, but I don't want to. Do not worry about interrupting me, Punjab. Don't worry about interrupting me. Okay, I'm here for you guys. There's enough of you here for me to be able to attend to your specific questions and concerns. I'm gonna say okay. Now, I want to get to this, okay? I've talked about what a class is, and I've talked about the premises of a class. The premise of class, right, is political and formal equality. But this political and formal equality is not in the aether, it's not abstract, it's instantiated in a state or a nation. By the way, guys, if you just hear this, my AC is on, so if you hear, not my AC, my heater's on, if you hear background noise, let me know. Control of the labor power? No, Neat. I don't know if you're trolling, Neat. Do not, forget about control, okay? Forget about control. Everybody just focus on this simple fact. We are all equal agents in the marketplace. All of the relations we're entering in with one another are based on contractual equal relationships. It's not about control. It's simply about the fact that some people are selling goods and some people have to sell the very source of those goods, because the source of those goods is social and human in nature. Work is what produces those goods. Now, this whole question of automation and all these confusions, I'll get to. But I want you guys to X out the political element, because when we're introducing politics, we're losing the ball, okay? To understand class, you need to think of politics only abstractly. Yes, it's premised by politics, and I'll get to that, but just assume everyone is equal politically. If you assume that, you're going to arrive at the essence of class. When you start talking about control, this may cover class relations, but it's not actually what's essential. Okay? Because even if we're all equal formally as citizens, some inevitable paradox of class is still arising. You made enough sense to me, but I have a tendency to follow disparate strands of thought that don't seem connected. That's Schizo ML gang. I guess that's it. Yeah. Clear. Okay. Glad to hear it, Neat. And I think I'm going to keep this video up, actually, because you guys are having such great feedback to it, and apparently you guys are following, and I'm really glad to hear that. So I'm going to keep this video up. Okay. I'm glad we're all on the same page as that. We understand control as much. Forget about control right now, right? We don't want to think about control. It's way more, guys, not to go off on a tangent, but this whole issue with control and domination is actually something based in the information age. what we call the information age, because with cybernetics, which is a loaded word, with the computer age and the information age, you're dealing with huge structures and systems of scale. So this issue of control and information and feedback, that's why control has become so significant in the way Marxists are presenting class. But they're forgetting the actual origins and history that made this concept necessary and possible. Dialectical materialism is about materialism. Okay, let me just continue on this for now. And we can go to other things maybe later. Get this stream to 50 likes. My final message. Goodbye. See you later, Quindy. Really glad to have you here. And thank you so much for the support. Seriously, got to go? Yeah, it's fine, man. We're not going to hold it to you. You know, you don't have to be here out of guilt. You know, we're going to keep streaming. You know, it's completely fine. But anyway, just so we're on the same page, right, guys? Condensing what I just said, okay? First, we have something called political formal equality, neoclassicist, Roman, Republican equality of citizens. Presupposing this, which means that all of the relations that we're entering in on the marketplace are based on voluntary and free contracts, contractual association, right? This is liberalism, by the way, more or less liberalism. This is the meaning of liberalism, is these relationships are purely defined by explicit, voluntary, and contractual relationships. This is basically liberalism, so that's why it existed in England. Presupposing this, some people are selling goods, and some people are selling the very means by which goods are possible, which is labor. And this can even be a hypothetical construction. You can even imagine this and deduce this in your head as just something that makes sense. It doesn't even have to express itself as a real phenomena. You can anticipate the proletariat before the proletariat even exists, just from this basic fact. We have goods. The requirements for the realization of goods are social and human in nature, specifically in the form of labor. Therefore, some people, the only goods that they're going to have is the very conditions of goods possibility, labor. And it's kind of paradoxical because labor is included as just one good among among others, and yet labor is only defined as what you need for goods to be possible. You see what I'm saying? So we're on the same page. Okay, now let me explain to you very simply why our views are heterodox and we diverge from Western Marxism, and we think Western Marxists don't have a dialectical or materialist view of class. Because keep in mind what I just said, and this is where you should have turned something on in your head when I said this. It presupposes formal political republican equality that's based in a polity, that's based in nation. But there's two problems with that. One, this formal equality doesn't exist in the either somewhere. It's instanced in some kind of common political institution, some kind of common polity, some kind of definite, determinate state, some real thing. The French state doesn't exist in the either. It's something that actually exists in reality. And if it actually exists in reality, then its premises are material. It doesn't come from nowhere. So we cannot make the assumption, actually, that everyone is an equal citizen for two very simple reasons. The first reason is that there are different states. Moreover, there are different nations. And nations give rise to states, right? There are different nations and there are different states. And the second most important reason is that even when you consolidate some kind of formal equality, it's always incomplete. I'm going to give you an example of why it's always incomplete. What is a Western Marxist? I'll get to it, don't worry. But let me just complete this kind of point, and then I'm going to do a check to make sure, to see if you guys are still following me on this, because I know this stuff is, this is really kind of territory that's heterodox, and it gets me in a lot of trouble with Marxists when I get here. Western Marxists, I should say. So, back to what I was saying. Even when you've created formal equality in the eyes of the state, Republican equality that allows all of us to be equal participants in the market, this is never complete. This is never fully consolidated. And the reason is very simple, right? It's what I just said. The foundations of the polity. You guys know what a polity is? A polity is a more general word for a state. But it's more general because a polity can refer to any type of instantiation of political power that encompasses a people. So that's a polity. A polity is just a more general word for a state. I don't really like the word state that much. I prefer polity. It's more specific. A polity, because a polity is determinate in particular, the way in which it's able to recognize and give recognition to the people over whom it rules is going to be limited. And I'm going to give you France actually as the very example of this. So France is a polity, right? France recognizes all of its people as equal citizens who are free. But here's the problem. Because it is materially limited, because it's determinate in real, the state, the extent of the people living in France who are able to be recognized by the institution of the French state, the polity, is inevitably going to be limited. It's going to be limited specifically to the people who are first and foremost geographically close to the institutions out of which this state exerts its power. The cities. In the countryside, the majority of the French nation maybe, they are going to be excluded by these institutions. Not because the institutions don't want them, but because the institutions are materially limited in their ability to encompass all of the people in the polity over which it has dominion. Okay? So, institutions of the state that, I'm going to use an Althusserian word, that interpolate people as citizens, equal citizens, are materially definite and therefore finite and limited. The only way in which... Oh, sorry, I'm going to be right back. I just have... One second. Appreciate it. Thank you. Sorry, I just have food. Okay. Sorry for cutting myself off. Sorry, I'm just trying to get back to my train of thought. The polity, right, even within a nation is going to be limited in regards to its material foundation in the people. You have the majority of the people, and you have institutions that interpolate the people as equal citizens. But these institutions are materially limited and definite. They're finite. They're not inevitably going to encompass everyone. There's aspects of the people that it necessarily is going to not be able to take into account, because the people are infinite. The people are material. They're infinite in a sense, right? They're the very foundation of these institutions. The institutions are finite. Do you guys follow me on this so far? The first one I think you understand, which is that there are different states and there are different polities. That's the first mistake Marxists overlook. There's different states and there's different polities. But even within the states and the polities, the way in which institutions make their people universal and equal citizens is limited. Does that make sense to you guys or no? Because now we're entering really tough waters. All clear so far? Really glad to hear that, Malik. Following? Okay, glad to hear it, guys. Yep. I'm kind of lost, not going to lie. But I'm not fully paying attention. Okay, neat. Do you want me to help you? Like, what are you lost about? Jennifer Eisen, what the heck? What's up, Jennifer? You've missed a lot of this stream, so... you might be a little lost of where we're at right now, but that's okay. I'm going to keep reiterating and giving a rundown of summary of where we were for new viewers. What was your last sentence? My last sentence was that there are two reasons why the Western Marxist view of class is flawed. The two reasons are simple. As we've already said, the presupposition of class, the essence of class, is formal political equality, where everyone is an equal on the marketplace. Only after this does the paradox of class arise. Why? Because some people are selling goods, whereas other people are selling what is abstractly defined as the source of the goods themselves, labor. Paradoxically, labor is treated as just another good, even though it's the source of all goods in the first place. This has been far more digestible and engaging than most of the lectures I had at uni and GL. I'm really glad to hear it. Like I said, everyone says I'm a schizo, I'm incomprehensible, and nothing I say makes sense. So that's really, it's kind of surprising even that you guys are saying this, and I'm really glad of it. I'm really, grateful for it. But I'm just explaining why the prevailing view of class is flawed. It's because, okay, so you get that, right? Okay, and the reason why that's a problem, Bruno, is that one, polities, the schizo part is the fun part. This is a chill stream on Sunday, so I'm dialing it down a little bit, but during the week, if I have time during the week, because I have some stupid bullshit I gotta attend to, trust me, the schizo will come back. Not so good, can relate to law. You're actually very lapidary. I'm going to look that up right now, not to distract too much, but I have no idea what that means. What is lapidary? Relating to stone and gems in work involved in grading, cutting, and polishing. So sharp? Like, it's like simple and clear cut? Fuck no, that's not the word I meant. That's okay. Let me just get back to it, okay? So, I want you guys to think about this in the contemporary context. In America specifically. Why is there a distinction between cities and the countryside, what's called the countryside? Is it because there's something specific about agriculture? Well, maybe. But in the United States and many other countries, and also, this is another important thing, countries where the rural countryside is formed by nomads who are not agricultural laborers, and that was also true historically, the rural is not really defined by agriculture. The rural is actually defined by the place that is outside of these materially limited and finite institutions that make all of us equal, formally equal. Or at least formally recognized in some way. Okay? The reason cities contrast so much with the countryside is because in cities, right, the institutions, geographically, this is what I'm saying, the internet actually complicates this in really interesting ways. But geographically speaking, the reason cities are so different from countryside is because within cities, the institutions that give recognition to us as formally equal that's the center of those institutions. So that's where those institutions are able to immediately exert the power. So that's why cities are bubbles, they're echo chambers, they're safe spaces. That's why institutions in America are the same way. Especially institutions, materially limited institutions. Yeah, the point we were trying to say, Jennifer, but we were speaking in the 19th century context, I kind of fast forwarded applying it to America today, is that every type of polity, and the word polity just means a more general word for a state. I don't like the word state because I think it's too specific. I like the word polity. A polity just refers to some type of political dominion that encompasses people. Basically. But every polity is finite and therefore materially limited. A polity also has material premises. But Marxists never have given recognition in the West to the material premise of a polity itself. And in fact, formally speaking, Mao Zedong was the first Marxist that I know of at least, who gave recognition to the polity as actually something materially definite. That's the whole point of Mao's encircling the cities from the countryside. And that's the whole reason why Mao had three worlds theory and all those kinds of stuff in the first place. It's why Chinese Marxism is generally so much more advanced. But I'm not going to go off on it. You know, because the schizo side is coming and I'm going off on a tangent about things. Let's just keep focused on where we are right now. In regards to this whole thing about the polity, okay? Okay, so the reason there's a distinction between cities and the countryside, you guys know why there's a distinction then? The reason is very simple, because the countryside just refers to the great majority of masses of people who are by default excluded from the state's institutions and the state's formal equality, not because the state is actively excluding them, but because there's aspects about the countryside that cannot be reined in or domesticated by the state or its institutions. There's aspects of these people in the countryside, their living being, their way of life, that resists this full domestication by the state that interpolates them as equal formal citizens or just instantiated institutions in general. It's true, most people likely benefit from the institutions, don't want them to change. Well, I'm going to get to why Marxists in the West get everything wrong, okay? I'll just go straight to it right now. What are the aspects of resistance? Well, Jennifer, I think in the intuition, I think I can make this pretty clear, and you'll understand what I mean. Think about the coronavirus crisis. Now, I live in Michigan, not to dox myself. Yes, the hillbillies, exactly. It's everyone knows that the countryside is more wild than cities. Countryside, people are less obedient to authorities than people in cities. In the countryside, people are more independent. They're more, they're more rebellious in general. I think on an intuitive level, I think we can all get that, right? The people who stormed the Capitol, that's another example. So that's what I mean by resistance. And think about the coronavirus also. The people least likely to follow the rules about coronavirus and most likely to not have a respect for the authorities are people in the countryside. I mean, just intuitively. I mean, factually, if it's true or not, just put that on the back burner. In our intuitions, we think this, right? And I think there's a reason why we think that always. Not always, Lal, trust me. Oh, okay. I don't know if that's directed to me, but... Okay, so here's the issue with Western Marxists. Going on top of that, right? Piggybacking off of that. The issue with Western Marxists is that the essence of class seems to be disclosed in these cities because it's in cities that we are formally equal, okay? What's up, Evan? Sorry. What's up, Evan? How you doing?
Everybody? No, I've been following. Continue.
You guys know Evan, right?
Hey, what's up, everybody? Thank you for joining
Yeah,
us.
yeah. Guys, get this.
New faces, welcome.
Get this. We have 27 likes and 28 viewers. Isn't that fucking crazy? That means almost everyone here liked this video. That is fucking insane. That is so impressive. We've never done that before. We appreciate that so much, guys. That's such a compliment, you know? So, kind of getting back to what I was saying, Marxists in the West have always made a fatal assumption, a fatally wrong, an idealist assumption. Actually, an idealist assumption. But, okay, what's up, No More Libs? Jennifer, let me get to Jennifer's question. But you stated it seems to be in terms of class in the cities. Well, yeah, in the cities, I won't say seems to be, I'll just say it straight. In cities, it's clear, right, that people are somehow much more formally equal in cities. People are more free in cities in the sense that in the countryside, you're weighed down by your traditions and your family and all these kinds of things. Or maybe you're a serf. Actually, historically, in the Middle Ages, you were a serf working in the countryside. If you escaped, you'd move to these cities and that'd be a fresh start, right? So in a city, right, that's where actually people are interpolated. To use this heavy Althusserian word, which I can explain, it basically just means branded, if you will, by the state as formally equal citizens, republican equality, right? Who enter into relationships on a contractual basis, on a fresh basis. They don't enter into relationships based on tradition. They enter into relationships on a fresh basis, and the only way to validate whether those relationships are voluntary or not is through contracts. And now in the West, you're seeing a tendency, I don't want to go off on a tangent, but you're seeing a tendency in which everything seems to be contractual. And this is really the decline of liberalism. I've seen people who say that a baby needs to give consent to change its diaper. It needs to sign a contract for its diaper to be changed. Because changing the baby's diaper is a violation. City versus countryside is an important conversation. No More Libs, you're so right about that, and we're trying to really clarify on a theoretical level why that is, and why Western Marxists have always gotten it wrong. And we're trying to work with everyone in the chat. So guys, reminder, if any of you are kind of not being able to follow and there's anything confusing about this, please say so, because I have time for all of you. There's not that many people here, so I do have time for every single one of you, and I want everyone to be able to walk away with something. Anyway, on the urbanite question. Anyway, so Marxists make the mistake that, so they observe, correctly they observe, that in the cities, that is actually where class is being revealed. Because in cities, that is actually where people are formally equal citizens entering into relationships based on contractual and formally free association. Okay? But Marxists make a fatal and idealist mistake. Intellectual types tend to have chauvinistic tendencies toward country people. I know, but Leonardo, for so long, they've justified it theoretically. And I'm here now to really lay it down why they're wrong theoretically and why actually it's a complete betrayal of Marxism. We know intuitively, I think, all of us know intuitively that countryside is more revolutionary than cities. We know intuitively that peasants are more revolutionary than intellectuals. We know intellectuals are basically counter-revolutionary, petit bourgeois, and so on, but we've only been able to rely on our intuitions. We have these Marxist nerds who come to us acting as priests, telling us that on this theoretical level, ultimately, despite our intuitions, Marx disagrees with us. We're wrong in terms of Marxism theoretically, our intuitions. So I'm here to really try to explain to you guys, even though you might already have the intuition, why this is theoretically true as well. And all of, obviously, these people on BreadTube, and unfortunately even some Marxist-Leninists, they're also reproducing this problem of this kind of misinterpretation of Marxism that comes from the West. Okay? So what follows from this is basically that this is why initially Marx and Engels committed the error, and I can say it was an error because they themselves would admit to this fact later in their lives. And if they didn't admit it explicitly and say the words, "this was an error," they admitted it in practice by denouncing it and disagreeing with it later in life. Which is this idea that the communist revolution or the proletarian revolution is going to occur in the more advanced polity. The logical consequence, not only of it occurring in the more advanced polity, is also that it will occur in the cities of that polity rather than the countryside. So you see, it's a double error. It's a logical conclusion. First, you say the backward places are not advanced enough. It's going to have to happen in the advanced countries. Then you say, even in those advanced countries, it's going to happen in the enlightened cities where everyone is politically, formally equal, and the countryside is too backward. And this is a fatal double error. And this error actually can't account. But I don't think Marx was wrong, because I think Marxists have made an assumption about Marx on his position. They made the assumption of stagism. They took for granted the fact that actually Marx was always a dialectician. Marx always thought about this dialectically. And that's why if you look at his analysis of the French, of the 18th Brumaire, right, and the Civil War in France and other works, Marx makes it very clear that the French Revolution, the new French Revolution, requires an alliance between the city proletariat, the people who would carry out the Paris Commune, and the majority, the great majority of the French people, to lead a people's revolution. Because the error Western Marxists have made, drawing from Anglo-Saxon metaphysics, was this idea that this is all occurring chronologically in time, okay? Sequentialism. First it's backward, and the backward evolves into the more advanced. But this is undialectical, because for a dialectical view, they exist simultaneously in time. There's not a temporal difference. And the Bolshevik, the Russian Social Democrats, as they were called in the beginning, engaged in a fierce debate about this. The economists of Russian social democracy said that Russia was too backward and that there shouldn't be any political revolution in Russia because there needs to be an economic transformation first. The Mensheviks were a little step below that, and they said there will be a political revolution which will be led by the big city liberal bourgeoisie. The Bolsheviks were the only ones to interpret Marx's class analysis as one that is simultaneous in time, meaning all of these things actually exist at the same time. It's not referring to some chronological Whig history of backward becoming more advanced. There's a dialectical insight that you have to derive from this that is now, that is in time. Interesting. That was my concern about revolutionary change. If on an international scale, wouldn't it be better to focus on countries with the most revolutionary potential in the imperial core? Well, if we're living in a polity, we are responsible, I think, for our relationship to that polity. I don't necessarily agree with that. But I think it's wrong to say that countries are too backward for revolution. And because the logical consequence of this in our own country is people like Vosh who are saying that people in the countryside are too backward and unenlightened, and that the people, liberals in the city who are enlightened, that's the actual source of leftist movements and socialism in the United States. And it's a fatal error. And if you think about this very practically in America, okay, the consequences of this error are what we see. Marxists in America are very arrogant intellectuals who look down upon the majority of the people in their own country. They think they're better than the majority of people in their own country. And they have this idea that the people in the cities, these institutionalized and over-socialized safe space type people that live in cities, are better than people in the country. And that's why they're kind of these Sam Cedar type, Poindexter, Nathan Robinson, Vosh, I don't care who you call them, these really nerdy, they have really nerdy demeanors. You have very few Marxists that have the demeanor of a good old communist as they were understood in the past. Somebody who was, more rough around the edges in their personality. Somebody who was, who wasn't so timid and so nerdy, and this is a great explanation. People on the left really need to get what you're saying. I know, and I've been trying so hard to say it as simply as I can. Makes total sense. I'm really glad this is making sense for you guys. I'm really, really glad this is making sense for you guys. And it's crazy how we have 30 likes and 28 viewers. So we have even more likes than viewers right now, and that is insane. Yeah, that is insane. Agreed. You can even see it in Mexico. There's places that are semi-feudal here still. The city people are very technocratic. And Jorge knows all about that, and he's explained it a lot at great length. But I kind of want to continue on this point, if that's all right, without divulging too much. And
Yeah, we can always come back.
if that's yeah, we'll come back to it. But I'm sure Jorge has a lot to say on this. I mean, a lot. He's educated us and told us everything about what's going on in Mexico. And how can Vosh be a nerd when he doesn't even read or lies? Well, Jennifer, for me, a nerd is not someone who reads. A nerd is someone who uses the pretense of intellectual truth as a source of arrogance and a way to look down upon humanity. It's people who think that if you're book smart, it means you're street smart. But actually, people who are book smart are some of the most stupid people you could ever meet. Being street smart is way more important than being book smart. Hell yeah, I was talking about the reactionary character of nerds. Yeah, I mean, Jorge looks like he disagrees. Okay.
¿Dónde está?
Yeah.
I was saluting a little thing. Oye, Leonardo, ¿de dónde eres?
Okay, I'll let Jorge, if you guys want. Jorge, go ahead and maybe give.
¿De dónde eres, Leonardo? Yo soy de la Ciudad de México. I was asking from de Puebla. I was asking from where he's from. Saludos, compatriota.
Okay. I think. So, basically, just to get this ball rolling again, the countryside, if you guys can follow, the polity, the state has to also be understood as definite and particular, and also materially limited. And the material foundation of the state, the polity, lies in the countryside. That's why we see the distinctions that we do between the city and the countryside. And Marxists have always made the mistake of thinking that because the essence of class reveals itself in the cities, that is actually the site of the class struggle. But they don't understand. They mistaken the site of a revelation of appearance with the site of being, of actual existence. Okay? It may be true that the proletariat emerges in cities, but all that does is tell us something about the being. But it doesn't actually mean it's the same thing as being itself. That's why peasants have more revolutionary potential, ultimately. Well, it's not that they have more revolutionary potential, because when states are overthrown, it tends to happen from cities. But think about Mao encircling the cities from the countryside. It's not always the case. Not to suck you off, but the stuff you are saying is what I've been thinking for years. This is spot on. I'm really glad to hear that. No more libs.
Yeah, that's excellent.
And we don't see it as you sucking us off at all. We believe you, okay? Because we know that intuitively a lot of people really feel this way. But we have a lot of these fake Marxists who are coming here and saying, no, your intuition is wrong. Actually, according to Marxism, the more advanced city proletariat is better than the backward countryside. And we're trying to demonstrate how, from a theoretical Marxist perspective, this is a gross distortion of Marx that has its origin in Western Marxism. My org has a lot of success in building the rural parts of our state recently. No other Marxist group even tries this. Mm-hmm. I would say this. The class struggle, the essence of class struggle, is revealed to us first in the advanced countries, in England and in cities. But it's a canary in the coal mine. It's only revealed there. It reveals something about being. The real stakes of this class struggle is always going to be about the majority of the people who are excluded from the institutional equality that is the very premise of this apparent class struggle that's going on in the cities. And this revolution is not just about the injustice of an inequality. The revolution, the objectivity of social revolution, basically lies in this simple fact. Institutions are materially limited. States are materially limited. Not only are they materially limited by the countryside being the foundation, but they inevitably enter into contradiction with their premises merely by the confrontation itself. When the state confronts the countryside, when the polity confronts the countryside, its own material foundation, this inevitably gives rise to a conflict because there's an aspect of the countryside that is not able to be domesticated by the state or the polity. And the polity responds to this fact by basically crucifying the people, the countryside, by basically, it's almost in an exterminationist way. And it's not only, obviously this isn't only internal to a polity, it's also true for the relationship between different polities and nations. I mean, we know this, the quintessential example of this is colonialism and imperialism. I think all Marxist-Leninists understand what I mean when I say it in that way. But that almost, not in terms of the severity and brutality, but structurally speaking, the same relationship is also going on internally with the countryside of these own countries. And the reason is very simple. The material foundation of the polity lies in the countryside. But the polity does not accept its own material foundation. Damn, so like what happened when I was long? I've been basically trying to give a rundown of what class is and the implications of it for Marxists. We cannot actually make the error of just saying, so it's the peasants versus the city and that's it. Because the peasants are what gives rise to the city itself. Cities come from the countryside, guys. Cities basically form when people run away from the countryside, and it's inevitable. So the real stakes of Marxism or communism or whatever you want to call it doesn't lie in just siding with the countryside against the cities. I mean, that's a materialistic instinct you should have. Yes, the material foundation is the countryside. But the real significance of Marxism, because that's nothing new, guys. I mean, populism has always been inevitable. Jimmy Dore is speaking to something without ever having to even think about Marxism. So is maybe Alex Jones, and maybe Donald Trump was doing that too. They didn't have to think about Marxism, and yet this objective social contradiction is revealing itself. No, in fact, the real significance of Marxism is basically lies in the aftermath. The real significance of Marxism is basically the aftermath of this social revolution, where institutions will inevitably be more amicable and more encompassing of the people over whom they exercise dominion. A good example of this happened actually during the New Deal. FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who did he appoint as his secretaries and his cabinet? He appointed country folk from Texas and wherever else, these simple people into government. He wanted these people. The reason he wanted these people is because the New Deal corresponded to an objective social revolution that expanded America's state and institutions to encompass and reflect more of its people than it did before. Okay? That's kind of almost something that's inevitable, but the real significance of Marxists is to assume leadership over this inevitable social revolution. The real significance of Marxists is to say, yes, we are with the peasants against the country, but a transformation does inevitably await the peasants, and the peasants must prepare themselves for the inevitability of change. We don't even know what that change will necessarily look like. It's just that what's revealed in the cities shows us Marxists that there is a fundamental class antagonism. That's why even if we make all of us formally equal to try to bridge the gap between town and country, there's still going to be a class contradiction. And that's what Marxists are here for. They're here to lead the people through this contradiction. The most popular politician that brought up class issues in America came out of Vermont. I mean, exactly. And we've been seeing this. I mean, guys, it's ridiculous, because the reason we have rule-minded leftists isn't because they arrived at it theoretically. It's just it's so self-evident that they couldn't even help just cave in and say, okay, yes. And it's the same for Marxism-Leninism. We don't have Marxist-Leninists because the majority of Western Marxist-Leninists have arrived at a consistent and coherent theoretical view of why Marxism is compatible with all of these experiences. It's just because of the fact it's so self-evident that why are these revolutions happening in the third world? Why are these revolutions happening in these anti-imperialist situations? And they have to cave in and just call a spade and accept the fact. But they haven't actually reconciled their intuitions with Marxism at this more fundamental theoretical level. Rather, they've almost conceded Marxism to these nerds, so to speak, in having the pretense of, listen, what about trailer parks? I mean, that's another thing, but yes, that's where the people are, you know? I'm not going to here to cause beef or drama. You know, we defend Caleb. We're big fans of Caleb. But I even see Caleb sometimes repeating these dogmas of Western Marxism sometimes. But that doesn't reflect Caleb's actual positions politically. Caleb has an anti-imperialist type of position and so on and so on. It's just an example, guys, okay? Even Marxist-Leninists inevitably get bogged down by the dogmas of traditional Western Marxism. They just make an exception, almost allowing themselves to be inconsistent theoretically to submit and give way to what's basically self-evident and unavoidable about basic experience. If Marxism is telling us that revolutions are only going to happen in the most advanced countries, and yet the real revolutions aren't happening in those countries, you know, Marxist-Leninists are just the people who are saying, okay, but, you know, this is the fact historically, you know. We may not know how to make sense of it theoretically, but it's just it's so self-evident we can't keep denying reality. I think what maybe might distinguish us, but we don't want to knock on an open door, is that we are reconciling Marxism-Leninism with traditional, real classical Marxism of Marx and Engels. There is nothing inconsistent about the experience of Marxism-Leninism with the most original discovery of Marx himself. It's completely consistent. So how do you speak to people in the countryside without pandering them? And it's a very, very good question, Neat. It's an excellent question. You first have to embrace the fact that there is a difference. Okay? You do have to embrace the fact. You can't just LARP and pretend to be you're from the countryside. You have to acknowledge the fact that there is a contradiction, there is a difference between the polity and the countryside, and that you're inevitably going to embody this contradiction in a sense yourself. Even the Maoists during the Chinese Civil War oftentimes would be accused of being too advanced in a sense, too futuristic, too modern, you know. But they were also paradoxically also accused of being too backward. So that's how you know you've hit the sweet spot. And the Bolsheviks were the exact same way. The Bolsheviks were on the one hand too modern and too new and too futuristic, and on the other hand they were too backward and too vulgar and so on and so on. That's the sweet spot. But the way you speak to people in the countryside is also, don't assume, distill the essence of their situation. And the essence is going to come at the expense of the appearance. And what I mean by that basically is that don't pander to them, but speak to the common object of their striving. Give form and speak to the people of the countryside what they know intuitively but don't know maybe culturally or intellectually, even obviously. Name something that they know and understand in their hearts, but they don't have the words to describe. That's what I mean. Speak a language that they understand, but never had the words to make sense of. And this is how you can speak to people from the countryside without pandering. Yes, you are coming from somewhere else. You can't just pretend to be one of them. You have to work with them. You have to gain their trust on this basis. We Marxists are inevitably going to be intellectuals. There's no way around that. We are people who read a lot, and we concern ourselves with very abstract things that are far from being relevant at a directly practical level. That is inevitable. But you have to distinguish yourself from the metropolitan intellectuals similar to you in entering into a dialogue and mutual engagement with the majority of the people in your country, in your polity, as I like to say. People in the countryside will not care for bullshit. Be honest and forthcoming, but also let them know what you're fighting for and how it will benefit them while building on the commonalities. I think the important thing is don't disguise who you are. And that's why I'm wondering, guys, I wonder if the CPUSA can be revived. Because why not just admit we're the good old communists? They're going to call the left communists either way. There's no way around that. There's no way around the fact that the enemy is going to call you that. But at least the CPUSA has tradition in this country. I don't like the politics of the CPUSA, and I don't like its leaders, and I don't like their positions. But I like the brand, and I'm interested in the brand. It's a very national, American, rooted in, it has a tradition, it has name recognition. So I wonder if the CPUSA might have some kind of future. You can't disguise where you're coming from. Yes, we're communists, but maybe you can show the people what it means to be a communist. Lead by example. Don't worry about the fact that they're going to label you a demon. Maybe show them what a demon can do. Show them what it means to be this kind of demon. And they'll change what they think about it. And that's why my biggest advice to you guys, if you're living in these communities at least, or you're engaging them in somehow, is that what you need to do, okay? What you need to do is lead, teach by example. If you want people to know what communism is, be a community leader. Help the people in your community. Use what little, it might be the smallest ounce of privilege you have that allows you to have the free time to care about all this abstract stuff. Use that to help the people in their basic everyday lives, gain their trust, and then they can say, well, hell, if that's a communist, I'm a communist too. Mm-hmm. Who cares about the label, right? Mm-hmm. Evan brought up in the past that this is what people in the black community were saying about the Panthers. You remember what you said?
Yeah, exactly. They were talking about the fact people would come up and say, oh, they're a socialist organization. They say, they feed my kids. That's socialism, and we go to the hospital, we have healthcare. That's so, okay. And yeah, we're Panthers, we're socialists. It's simple.
It's as simple as that, guys. The labels don't matter. What they mean concretely is what matters. You can call yourself a communist, but you should show them what that actually means. Mm-hmm. Don't worry about whatever thing they have in their head that they think of it.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it comes down to action, right?
Yeah.
So the rest is just chit-chat.
Yeah. Don't tell people, you don't know what communism is. Communism is actually a moneyless, classless society. It's a really popular meme, but it's meaningless. Don't explain all these. You don't have to worry about that stuff. Be a good person. Be an effective leader. And they'll care about what communism is when they see that. They'll see how they'll see how the deeper harmony makes sense. And it'll even open their eyes to history. They'll say, I can see what this person is doing for my community, for my people, what these communists in the past were doing the same thing for their people. it'll completely open up their horizons. You won't have to educate people on this theoretical level if you're an effective and good leader. The reason I wouldn't say cosmonaut, okay, let me go down the chat. Sorry, I've been kind of neglecting. Would it also be fair to say that in an advanced country like the United States, inner cities and ghettos can play a similar role to the countryside? Malik, that's an excellent point. That's true, but for black people. Black people are also divided between metropolitan and countryside, and inner cities and ghettos do serve as the kind of countryside of the black community. But that actually is something internal to black people. It's not the business, I don't think, of white communists to try to assume leadership of the black masses. It's the business of black people. Like I said, there's contradictions in polities, there's contradictions in nations. That's why intersectionality is wrong. We cannot assume an intersectional position. We can only focus on our own people, on our own polity, okay? We can't be intersectional. You know, I can't account for people, I can't account for people living in Indonesia, okay? I just can't. I can only focus on my own people. I can try to fight against my state trying to bother them, and I can work with the people of Indonesia on a mutual dialogue basis, but I can't actually intersectionally account for every time. You know what I'm saying? That's why intersectionality is wrong. PCUSA is the... Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I think it goes back to the question that Jennifer had asked. Just to touch on briefly, something to think about. We're talking about concerning about revolutionary change. If you're an international scale, wouldn't it be better to focus on countries with the most revolutionary potential than the imperial core? Just like what you just said, you have to focus on your people.
Exactly, yeah. PCUSA is the modern iteration of CPUSA. I know, Cosmonaut, the only reason I bring up CPUSA is brand recognition. And I wonder, because of how it's kind of like the DSA where local chapters seem to be really taken over, I wonder how much is knocking on an open door. Maybe the CPUSA, if you can make your case rationally and logically, and I think I could do that at least, I think the CPUSA can be given a new leadership. The reason the CPUSA has bad politics is because on a theoretical level, a certain orientation dominates on its own merits. It's the Popular Front from the 1930s. If you can theoretically address this issue of the Popular Front and convincingly and persuasively explain why the CPUSA's position is the conclusion it's drawn from the Popular Front is mistaken, maybe the CPUSA can become something, can be led by a different element. Christopher Hilali from the CPUSA is pretty based. I know the name, I'm not too familiar with him, but that sounds really based, how you described him. Yeah, everyone is quick to call anyone left of center communist, so why not embrace it? That's what I think too. We need a Juche party in the USA. I think if there's anything very specific to Korea, it's Juche. I heard the PCUSA is doing a lot of outreach in rural areas. The PCUSA, who is that? The reason I'm speaking about CPUSA, guys, is the brand. I'm not saying it because I think they're the best party politically, but they have the best brand, and maybe institutionally, they're a very powerful platform. So that's the reason I'm talking about them. It's not necessarily because I think they have good politics, which they don't. They said to vote for Biden, and they've always had these bad politics. Actions speak louder than aesthetics. They definitely do, even though aesthetics are very important, and aesthetics are another way in which you show people the meaning. You know, it's more effective to show people communism through aesthetics than through definitions, for example. I think the majority of communists, self-proclaimed communists in America, I know, one way or another became communists because they listened to the Soviet anthem or they listened to Soviet music and they saw all the aesthetics and they just really liked it. You know, there's no shame in admitting that. The reason is because there is a lot of beauty in the Soviet anthem. There's a lot of beauty in communist music and its aesthetics. And it kind of manifests and reveals what communism is, even if you don't know how or how to describe that intellectually, in a way that's more effective, I think, than definitions. There's also the black...
Pictures speak louder than words, to use Pride Tunes.
I
Afro lion.
I
The
agree.
pictures themselves, yeah. So you can't take the aesthetic for granted.
I agree with that 100. I love that. Pictures speak louder than words. I love that so much. That's so true.
Yeah. Yes. I came up with it. So, I'm just fucking around.
Yeah. Um, CPUSA can only be revived if the leadership gave up the, the BS. To be honest, I know, but who's going to affect that? I don't think they're going to do it by themselves. It has a history which is rich, but the group seems to be working against their own history. I know, but the branches seem to have more power than, and I don't see an effective exercise of central authority on part of the CPUSA. I think it's run by very old people who are out of touch with the local branches, and I think the local branches are overwhelming the center. So that's something to think about. There's also the black belt in the south. Fun fact is that Stalin actually viewed the black belt south as the future basis for an independent black state. And I somewhat agree with Stalin's position. I think it's far more effective, at least, than this liberal kind of BLM moralizing. Yeah, local branches seem pretty based. It's the leadership that have their head in the sand. Yeah. Hey guys, what's up, Falcone? North Korea is real Korea. Over the direction the party was going. Oh, PCUSA is a split from the CPUSA. I see. Well, it's interesting. I don't have all the answers, but I'm just telling you what I think. Maybe I could be wrong. I'm open to being wrong. Maybe there's something about the CPUSA, just because of the tradition, just because of the brand. I don't think you can build a revolution in America. America is an empire, so they're more likely to double down on the mode of production. That's a good thing to bring up, Pride Tunes, is that I'm not really convinced that if you're a Marxist, you just have this goal of revolution and you should just try to affect the revolution. It's not really about affecting a revolution. It's about establishing some kind of concrete relationship to the people, first and foremost. And a revolution just might be an inevitable consequence of that. I mean, it will be an inevitable consequence. It's not something you voluntarily enact. A revolution is the result of an objective process of some kind. And the thing communists and Marxists are tasked with is making sense of reality for the people. Because that's actually not given. A lot of people assume that's given. It's not. It's really, Trump is, and all these strange things, these strange trends on the internet is proof that you can't take for granted how people are making sense of the world. So Marxism taps into something way more essential than just trying to voluntarily affect a revolution. It's not what Marxism is about. Marxism is about establishing a dialectical and concrete relationship between the most advanced and the lesser advanced. Theory, thought, and the people, right? This is really what Marxism is about, simplifying it. East Germany is real Germany. Jimmy Dore is not really calling for the overthrow of the state, but he's clearly participating in the unfolding of an objectively revolutionary process of some kind. I think everyone can see that. It's why a lot of tankies really like Jimmy Dore. America for the past 20 years has been mastering the art of running the country in permanent crisis mode. Everything is a damn crisis. That is very true, yeah. I hate to say that, but it seems we're observing the history of empire. Yeah, I can't sit here and tell you that America will just continue to exist. Maybe the American polity we can't take for granted. Maybe it will inevitably collapse. Maybe it is collapsing as we see it. What I want to do, though, is give you guys the right tools and just allow you guys to begin from somewhere better than what I see a lot of Marxists on YouTube are trying to begin you with. Because a lot of Marxists on YouTube, when they're telling you that, well, class means power over the workplace. Communism is moneyless, classless society. That's the meaning of communism. It's a definition. They're making you begin from a bad place. I want you guys to begin from a better place and be able to discover things better on your own. Open up more channels. Because they're really closing a lot of doors on you when they're having you begin with that. America won't be an empire forever. Very true. Revolution happens due to pre-existing contradictions. Very true, Bolshevik Blade. It's not something you voluntarily enact. It's something that is the culmination of an objective social revolution. Marxists do not introduce this social revolution. They attempt to clarify it. There's a really big difference, okay? That's why we, Infrared, like Jimmy Dore. He's an example of this objective kind of social revolution or movement or whatever you want to call it, that it's not premised by some voluntary act. It's just existing. It's the result of a pre-existing contradiction. I think a lot of Western Marxists also don't understand the difference between a nation and a country. Yeah, very true. I think revolution is possible if a weakness in the permanent crisis strategy is exploited. I think, well, I'll get to the thing about revolution later. I don't think Marxists should be so focused on revolution. We should accept it's inevitable. We shouldn't be scared of it. But the point is not voluntarily enacting some dramatic revolution, okay? It's more about being at peace with the fact that it is inevitable, and then at the right time, when it is time, and everything's in motion, like, you learn from the Bolshevik experience. When it's time, you'll be able to tell when it's time, like Lenin was able to. But it's not a voluntary act. It's just responding to some objective striving. One way or another, the United States of America, as it's constituted, is going down. It's just a matter of what comes next. We've argued that ourselves. It's just that so far it seems like, it's like I'm trying to hit and be like, is this mic on? It seems like with the Biden, it's especially what's going on in Russia. Maybe I'm gonna do a stream later, and I'm gonna break down Vosh's disgusting video about the Russian protests. But it's clear that there's a little bit of juice left in the American empire, and we're patiently seeing what's going on and observing, and we don't really know what to make of it quite yet. But that was our position running up to the election. The inevitabilities in Marxism are all funded upon pre-existing contradictions, which is why revolution isn't exactly Bolshevik blade. And one thing Western Marxists have a really tough time understanding is the dialectic of freedom and necessity, which is basically the fact that just because something is inevitable doesn't mean it doesn't warrant your participation, your full participation. There's Eastern ontologies understand the dialectic of determinism and free will or whatever, right? It's very clear, it's very evident, but Westerners have a really hard time with it, apparently. Subjective versus objective conditions, yeah. Revolution is a process. Revolution isn't always about killing people with guns and stuff. Yeah, that seems more like a fantasy, It's a fantasy. Fantasies maybe can't be bypassed, but I think my position on fantasies is that put your fantasies to work, Create things. Create beautiful works of art. Work with your fantasy. Put your fantasy to work. Don't take your fantasy for granted. Expand upon it. Water it. Take care of it. Cultivate it like a garden. That way you won't have to actually LARP in actual reality. Use your imagination and your fantasy to... It can be productive. It really can. The problem is when people try to make their fantasy reality. And that's what you call a nightmare.
Yeah.
Right now, the reactionary forces are very, very aggressive in America. Fascism, I don't know if I agree with the fascism analysis. And I'm not really scared of the reactionary forces. What concerns me more is the Biden's aggression. Biden seems far more aggressive, far more reactionary than the Capitol Hill storming people. I think that's going to be very evident to leftists very soon. And it's going to hit them like a brick from a mile away. Revolution is a negation process, to be exactly Bolshevik blade. And Marxism, the point of Marxism is the negation of the negation. What comes next? How do you think we should build up the class? We shouldn't look at it that way, Pride Tombs. We don't build up class contradictions. We discover them objectively. That's the thing. You don't build up anything. You just have to discover them and clarify them as they actually exist. I didn't think Navalny was any threat to Vlad. We'll see, Anarchists have jumped on the... Yeah, I know. I don't know if we have time for a Navalny stream, but it's definitely something I'm thinking about. Just reacting to Vosh's video. And I might keep that up so maybe he can respond to it. Maybe it'll blow up. I don't know. I'm sure it'll get a lot of dislikes, though. The revolution will have stages. I mean, I don't... The thing... There's no need to be fixated on revolution so much. Revolutions are things that happen very quickly. Political ones, I mean. They happen very quickly. They're not. They're never like this dramatic, beautiful. A revolution is. By the time a revolution is possible, you know, everything's already in place anyway. So I don't think Marxists need to be worrying about a revolution. I think they need to be worrying about their relationship to the objective contradictions that might give rise to one. And so far, their relationship is more than unsatisfactory in countries like America and the West. Reactionaries tend to be paper tigers overall. They are nothing to be worried about. I very much agree with that view, Jennifer. Totally agree. Was thinking Biden was the reactionary for... Oh, okay. I understand what you mean then. Taking notes, Cosmonaut. That's great. Yeah, that's great. That's why I'm thinking about keeping the stream up, because maybe people, will just be able to watch it again. Yeah, while American leftists are screaming about proposed Proud Boy fascists, the actual threat... I know, no more libs, but they don't get that yet. But they're going to get it pretty soon. Another thing I want to do is that I want to keep the chat, the live chat, in our video. But I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to keep our chat so people can see the chat as they watch this video. But we might not be able to do that. Let me see something. Stream settings. Unlist live replay. Oh, no, I'm going to... No, wait. Unlist live replay once stream ends. It's not enabled. I don't know what's going on. Sorry.
Viewing knows.
Yeah. Unlist. What does that mean? Unlist. Because it always says this chat is not available after. Sorry. Let's continue. There are decades where nothing happens. Exactly, Tova. It's exactly that. Like the fact that there was an increase in evictions and people being. I know, Jennifer. It's so clear it's so clear what's going on. But Marxists not only failed to respond to this very self-evident crisis we're in, they're even an objective hamper on it, unfortunately. YouTube saves the chat. But, okay, yeah. I'll see. America has no left. Unfortunately, that is the case. As of now, it has no left. There's good figures, people I would consider good figures. Caleb Maupin's a good figure. There's plenty of others. But unfortunately, they are individuals. They're not movements in themselves. I think you can keep the chat. Oh, okay. As of current, we need more studies. Yeah, that's what this stream is for, We want... Look at what Maupin's doing. A think tank is definitely... That's really good to hear that he's opening up a think tank. Something I'm always conflicted about, guys, is that I want to have friendly dialogue with other Marxist-Leninists who we might disagree with some things about. But the reason I don't want to pursue that so much is that I don't want to cause conflict among us. I don't want it to be seen as conflict, but just friendly dialogue. But it's definitely not something I'm interested in forcing, especially if people aren't interested in that. But I'd love to have just a friendly, non-dogmatic, very, even more friendly than the Vosh and Hakim stream. Why shouldn't we as Marxist-Leninists have conversations? They don't have to be debates. They don't have to be hostile interactions. We can just exchange different points of view. There's no need to be dogmatic. I mean, we sent out a tweet, not to plug in our Twitter shamelessly, twitter.com/showinfrared. We shared a tweet saying, Western Marxists have no right to be as dogmatic as they are. I mean, because in 100 years, they've done nothing. So what do you have to lose? Why not be open to Heidegger and, I don't know. I'm talking about Caleb Maupin. I'm also watching a stream at the same time. I'm sure a lot of people are doing that. I think that's how it works in general. We're talking about similar points, lol. That's great to hear. And yeah, I mean, we're really glad about Caleb's success, and we want to all grow together, It's important to note that U.S. hegemony is dying. Very true, yes. But we should also be mindful of the dialectic of how death could also be something productive, in the sense that it's not just death. Look what's going on in Russia. I mean, it's kind of clear to me that what's happening in Russia is a response to the Biden victory. So we're patiently looking and seeing what's going on. We've been expecting the decline and fall of the American empire for a long time, but that doesn't mean new events aren't going to happen. They are happening. Unity they possessed while trying to destroy the Eastern Bloc as it was not connected to the global financial system. Yeah. Caleb seems chill to talk to. Yeah, he seems like a really chill guy. I actually like him a lot. I searched and apparently there's somewhere a setting that you can have enabled called Allow Live Chat Replay. Thank you for that. I'm going to look at that right now. Allow Live Chat Replay. Maybe it's too late because I already hit live. Let me see. Edit. Oh, it might be here. Let me see. Details, live chat. Oh, here it is. Enable you and each other while you're live stream. Wait. Allow live chat to replay. Oh, it's already saved. Okay, I don't know what's going on. It says enable live chat. What does that do? This while your stream is in progress. Is it not enabled now? Let's save that. Sorry, I didn't mean to distract. Deaths can fertilize the earth. Okay, wait, let me go back. Thank you. I'm tired of seeing folks be so hostile online. Yeah, I agree, but when it comes to BreadTube, maybe it'll be a little different because I think BreadTube has actually said things like they want violence against tankies and things like that. So that's a different story, you know. Maybe I'll be more mean if I debate Vosh. Deaths can fertilize the earth. What is the origin? What is the context of that? No more libs. Check out Bohemian Dialogue. Might be applicable to non-dogmatic exploration. Yeah, maybe. Try getting in contact with other Marxist YouTubers for collabs. We're actually going to have a really cool collab with Ewoks Unhinged on Friday. I don't know if you guys know who that is, Ewoks Unhinged. On Friday, Infrared is going to be collabing with him on a live stream. It's going to be really based, so check it out if you can. Now it's time to move away from the political sphere and enter the social one. Learn from the Panthers, build trust, and build up communities. I agree, but it's also important not to LARP. That's an important point. Not to assume that's what you meant, but sometimes people make that mistake. Fertilize the rice fields. You have to look under the recording section of the settings. I don't see it. Recording settings? See the stream settings. Oh, in reference to what you said about death and what... Oh, okay, I understand. About the death of America. Okay, understood. Capitalist equals good fertilizer. It's dark. I'm trying to find recording. I totally agree. Say no to LARPing. Yeah, that's good to hear. You know, a lot of people just don't get that. Yeah, I don't see the recording part. Manage? No, I'm not going to exit the stream. Okay. It might be too late now, but that's okay because I'm reading chat and people who watch this might be able to see that. By the way, I'm seeing people following us on Twitter. Thank you so much for that, guys. To be not blind. Okay, so guys, I just want to basically give a conclusion. I might not end the stream quite yet, but I want to give a conclusion to the point of the stream. It's only been 2 hours, but basically, it's relative. Class is something that is relevant at the level of when there's already some kind of equality. Let's just call it equality. But you can't assume the equality to have already come into being. There's also a new striving for a new type of revolutionary. The bourgeois revolution is not something that happens temporally in the future or the past. It's something that's co-temporal with the proletarian revolution, and it's not inherently bourgeois either. We call it bourgeois because of the outcome, not because of the premise. Sometimes Engels referred to the Jacobin dictatorship as a proletarian dictatorship. He has done that sometimes. It's because the outcome is what makes it bourgeois, not the premise. But this general goal to break and pulverize institutions, cities that are insulated, and expand the latent forces of the countryside, unleashing the forces of production, initiating a revolution in the forces of production, which is actually being retarded by the cities and by these institutions. The first form of which, by the way, was the aristocracy, was the feudal relations, as they were explicitly coded into the kingdoms and state. Dear God, guys. Someday this channel is going to get so big you won't be able to read the chat. Well, we said this before, that we're going to remember the people who were here first, and they're going to get priority. Definitely. Do you think America will fall to fascism? I think what we said about fascism before is that anti-fascism is a big, as it's currently manifest, is a big distraction, and it's also something that's been cucking the left and the West, this fear of fascism, when in fact, fascism is already an arm of the American octopus. Look at what's going on in Ukraine right now. Look what's going on in Eastern Europe and elsewhere in the world. Fascism is not necessarily something that's going to happen in America. It's something that's already... fascism never was in the core, okay? It was always something funded by remote investors of liberal countries. The issue isn't fascism, it's liberalism. Because fascism is just the hired thug of liberal democracy. Democracy, right? When Vosh says the goal is to defend democracy, he doesn't understand that fascism is actually the hired arm of what he's calling liberal democracy, right? Fascism itself poses no threat to liberalism. And that's why Oswald Mosley in England was laughed to the bank, at least in the 30s. He was a clown. It was not possible in England. It was neither possible in the United States. You had the businessman's plot. But who foiled the businessman's plot in the United States? A high-ranking general, Smedley Butler. Look him up. There was no possibility of fascism in America or England, because American and English elites were the ones who bankrolled fascism in the first place. America-backed countries amount of... Exactly. Mercenaries, death squads, fascist military juntas. Look at the history of the Cold War. None of this is new. Okay? Instead of fearing the boogeyman of fascism, go to the source. It's American liberalism. Antifa is just a mantle that any liberal could put in order. Well, if you're not a liberal, you're a fascist, right? Anything beyond liberalism is fascism. That's what fascism means today. It means something beyond the threshold of liberalism. You'll notice that people will share Umberto Eco's 12 vague-ass points of fascism. Oh, well, if there's not... Yeah, if there's an otherization and there's us versus them, it's fascism. Well, you want to know what the first us versus them was? It was the class struggle. I don't know if you're saying Marx and Engels were fascists, but they were definitely setting up a situation... theoretically, I don't know, at least, where there was an us versus them situation laid out pretty explicitly. There's the proletariat and the class enemy. Is that fascism? Well, if you listen to the Umberto Eco people and all those type of liberal fascism mongers, they're going to tell you that Stalinists are fascists, leftists are fascists, we're fascist, China's fascist, everyone's fascist. Why not just ignore this distraction, okay? We're all going to be fascists in the eyes of liberals. There's no need to get bogged down into the distraction that is so-called anti-fascism, okay? Yep, exactly. U.S. oil helped insure Germany and had an army that could easily destroy Republican Spain and the USSR. Yeah, well, these weird Anglo financiers and elites... You guys, look up a video you can see of the English royal family was doing Nazi salutes in the 30s. So something was going on, okay? You can call me a conspiracy theorist, but I have the inclination, okay? It's my intuition. It's my impression that something was going on in the world of the elites that was connected to German fascism. There's a lot of indications of that. Again, the businessman's plot thing, all sorts of things like that. Today, things like AFRICOM and Obama spearheading it. Yeah. I think corporatist fascism is dead. The U.S. has moved towards different... the oppression of the working class by the bourgeoisie. So the bourgeoisie is ultimate fascist by their own point. Because the workers is an oppressed class. Are there any countries that would be considered corporatist today? Corporatism was a catchword of various ideologists. It's not. You shouldn't pay that much attention to it. Sometimes we can't just get tangled in the weeds of definitions. I 100% agree with that, Jennifer. 100% agree with that. Very true. Isn't every capitalist country on earth corporatist? A corporate is just some kind of like state institution, if I understand this correctly. Some kind of a corporate, incorporates. Okay, don't get too caught up in these words. George VI, I think, was a fascist, but he was a threat to the plans of the British state. That was during the war, I think. During the war, but the fact that it was that, entrenched in the British monarchy should give you an impression of the popularity of fascism among the British elites in general. I mean, if it was directly in the royal family, imagine where it was in these business circles and etc. So, yeah, I mean, that's important to pay attention to. Well, maybe this is a good way to kind of ease on maybe ending the stream soon, not quite yet, is basically on this point about us living in socialism. This is really what people have trouble grappling with. Of all the things we've said, the response to this point has been overwhelmingly negative. We don't hold it against you guys, because it is an outrageous and crazy thing to say that we live in socialism. Socialism already won. There's a political economy of socialism. But I want to introduce you guys to that based on what we've already discussed. I'm not going to go into it, but I'm just going to introduce you guys to it briefly, that we already live in socialism. Okay, let me answer this question first. Hitler and Mussolini were very popular in the Western liberal media. Yeah, and people really cover that up now, don't they? Why do you think about alliances with rich peasants tactically to fight the capitalists? You don't have to target rich peasants specifically, but will it be inevitable that kulaks might join your cause? Maybe it will, and should you go out of your way to exclude them? I don't see why you should. I think it's important to be pragmatic. But anyway, let me get to this point about us living in socialism, because this is something people... My main point about us living in socialism is not actually so much to say that all of history's ended, we're already living in socialism. I rather want to open up and entertain you guys with the possibility of a socialist political economy. The fact that socialism itself has its own history, has its own contradictions, and moreover, has its own economy. There's an economy of socialism. Now, I'm not going to give you a definition of socialism. I'm rather going to entertain you with what you've probably already seen, very vaguely. Socialism refers to some kind of social direction of production. Production directed no longer on the anarchic terms of pure profit, but directed for some social reason. Very vaguely. That's at least fair, intuitive connotation of socialism, isn't it? Well, in this day and age, I want you guys to think about how this relates to something we call the attention economy. Isn't it true that these common sites of social meaning and purpose and causes, measured maybe in the attention economy, in likes, clicks, streams, and all this data kind of stuff, the internet, aren't these creating autonomous sites of production chains being cohered, aren't these creating interfaces by which the logic of production is following forth? Let me give you a really simplistic example. Let's say you're watching a movie or a streamer. Let's say you're watching a streamer, right? A streamer is flashing all sorts of brands, and is not only flashing all sorts of brands, but is making it more likely for you to follow through with a certain way of life. The streamer is setting an example for you, giving you an example of, only eat vegan, or do this or that, things that affect your lifestyle. Infrared lives are back. Theodoro the Butthurt is back. Anyway, welcome Theodoro. You're as butthurt as usual. But you're the first shit talker we've had in a long time, so can't wait to see. See what you have to say. But anyway, beyond spamming, do you have anything else to say beyond spamming? Infrared lives. Oh shit! If you meant lives, then my bad. If you weren't meaning anything hostile, my bad. Then I apologize. Anyway, let me continue with this thing about socialism. Like Instagram lifestylers. That's an excellent example, Jennifer. That's an excellent example. But there's so many other examples, Ultimately, production revolves around some kind of common purpose. And this purpose is being put to work economically, as measured in things, not only, but in things like the attention economy. Another example I always like to bring up is Tesla. You have people devoting their whole lives to Tesla. But this also has implications for how production chains are being cohered and rationalized and organized. It's an interface by which production is being controlled, not purely towards the end of making profit, but towards some kind of social ends. These social ends seem today to be more decentralized. In China, it's different. It's centralized. But even in China, there's an extent to which they're decentralized, specifically in the realm of culture. With socialism with Chinese characteristics, there's a very much in kind of decentralized process of cultural production that's very autonomous, and the two main goals of socialism are the abolition of the anarchy in production and creating the abundance of material. Anarchy in production isn't counting external social costs. Ultimately, it's for profit. Yeah, but the thing Bolshevik Blade is that if we still have an anarchy of production, I don't know. I couldn't tell you. If we do, then it requires a global perspective, not a national one, but a global one. Because at a national level, I think it's plainly not true. We don't have anarchy of production at the national level. At a global one, maybe you can look at some things interesting. But it's not just anarchy of production. There's a decentralized rationality of production that seems to be at play in this new digital or attention, whatever you want to call it. It seems like there is a rationality of production. It's just decentralized. And it's measured specifically in terms of the digital economy, of attention and, think clout and things like that. Which is why the Russian anti-imperialist geopolitical struggle is so important. I agree. We are definitely with this Russian disinfo, whatever. YouTube can ban us. I don't care. Like such people who engage in brand loyalty. Yes, Jennifer. And this also has consequences for the very reason of the rationality of production. Goods become produced in a way that circles around these causes and these brands. Okay? And these causes and these brands, in turn, are forms of interfaces with production that reflect the concrete material reality. So it's a dialectical relationship. But the most primordial form of this relationship was in socialism in the 20th century. In socialism, you had a direct relationship between some kind of rational aim and the forces of production, if you will. It was cohering production around some kind of common aim that was instantiated in the state. Today, that seems like it's something that's decentralized. We didn't simply see a return to capitalism. It seems like socialism itself was decentralized. That's really more what we're trying to say. There seems to be an economy of socialism. I'll give you another example. A lot of people will say, like from Guy Debord's Society of the Spectacle, that everything is just an illusion. It's all deception to distract us from the fact that we're living in a 19th century capitalist society that's exploitative. And all this media and all this stuff, internet bullshit, is all just a spectacle to distract us. But nonetheless, you can observe that this spectacle has its own internal logic. It has its own internal economy. It has its own internal history. It seems it's still productive. It's still going on. So at what point is that just dogmatism and a refusal to acknowledge new conditions of our reality? Most food is subsidized by the U.S. government, meaning that in order to keep up the profit, the government buys a large share of it and then throws it into a landfill. That's a good example too. We've played games against each other before, but not Halo. There was no competition then. Me and Evan specifically played split screen Arc on the PlayStation.
I'm just a far superior talent.
We've never gamed remotely because few of us have gaming PCs, I think. But I love Halo 3. Who brought up Halo 3? I think I saw that. I love Halo 3. It's one of my favorite games.
Yeah,
So it's crazy.
He's always talking about it.
Yeah, I'm always talking about Halo, Almost in like an annoying extent, I love Halo.
I will need to go. There's another things that I need to do in this moment.
Okay, see you later, Jorge.
We will see you later. Goodbye, chat.
See you later, man. Gamer? I'm kind of a failed gamer, I'm looking for a game to play, but we don't have to dwell on it too much. This is commented on in society and the spectacle itself. Just because the spectacle is the dominant mode of production doesn't mean you can get away from it. Well, Alexander, I'm not saying you can get away from it. I'm saying it's necessary to... I'm not even saying that, though. I'm not saying you should speak the language of the spectacle. I'm saying it's a dogmatic assumption to dismiss it as a spectacle in the first place, rather than a radical transformation of the social rationality around which production is oriented. From what position of reality and substantiality can you say it's just a spectacle, is my question. What form of materiality are you presupposing when you're calling it a spectacle? These are define my problems with Debord, Would Halo games get better under communism? Let's drop the Halo subject for now. I'm not sure that's why people are here. It's for Halo. Wait, I didn't pay full attention. Why are we living in socialism? Because social media exists? But isn't that a funny word, social media? Just think about that word. I mean, there's a reason why socialism and social media share... and socialism and social media share something called social in common. Also, to do the chat thing, go into YouTube Studio, edit, live chat, allow chat to replay. Okay, I'm going to try to do that really quick, not to get away from chat. YouTube Studio. Go to YouTube Studio, edit, live chat. Sorry, what is it? YouTube Studio.
Edit, live chat.
There's no edit. There's no edit anywhere. Oh, it's edit on the live streaming. Okay, edit, live chat, allow chat to replay. Okay, it's already enabled though. It was already enabled. I don't know what's going on. It's not because we have social media per se. I mean, that wasn't my justification. We're living in socialism. I'm saying you should understand we're living in socialism just so you recognize that there's an economy, there's a socialistic economy and not just a capitalistic one, is what I'm trying to say. The socialism is itself economic. It's not just some end goal or some far-off thing in the future. It itself has contradictions and material economic reality. I think that's my point. How do you fail at having fun? I just can't find it fun games. It should be seen as a phenomena specific to the current status quo. Halo stream when? Never, dude. So all nations are just socialist in your opinion right now, or just the U.S.? I think more or less across the world, socialism has already prevailed. It's default. I mean, guys, I want you to understand something and keep something in your head, okay? Most countries in the third world, more or less, I'm kind of botching it, most of them, if they aren't ex-communists, they were educated, their states are built by people who were educated in Marxism. Even Japan, Imperial Japan, the intellectual elite were all familiar with Marxism. It's nothing new. Socialism, nothing new, nothing surprising, nothing shocking at all. None of this was new, okay? Most countries today take that for granted. So all I'm trying to say is that we're living in a new reality that you can't interpret under the lens of 19th century capitalism. I don't actually care what you call it. You can call it capitalism. I like to call it socialism just because I want to give people the idea or allow people to understand the fact that this is not some pre-socialist thing, okay? If it's not socialist itself, you could say it's post-socialism. But I like to say it's socialism but I prefer to say it's socialism. Because I want to speak of socialism objectively, not as some subjective goal. Objectively, what is socialism, right? Like, what I mean by that is that socialism can exist even though the political superstructure is not ideologically socialistic, is what I'm trying to say. There's an objectivity of socialism, is what I'm trying to say. The people make up the content of social media and all for free. It's another important thing. It has nothing... Yeah, I mean, it's all for free. We do it all for free. Why? Because we can't take for granted how we make the world meaningful. And the way in which we make the world meaningful is being measured and denominated and economized in an extremely interesting and important way that Marxists haven't made sense of. Centralization of socialism? Not necessarily. It's always a dialectic of both. Every socialism corresponds to a decentralization, actually. Would it be fair to characterize what you're saying is that capital continues to centralize the economy? No, it's not that capital is centralizing the economy. It's not capital which is doing it. Capital is an afterthought to this more fundamental way in which common social causes, or whatever you want to call them, social aims and social rationality, is actually assimilating capital itself. It's just that there persists to be an economy of this socialism. Do you guys want to know what an economy means? There is some kind of division of goods. There is some kind of differentiation and distinction in how something makes itself subsist. The same thing is true for socialism. It's not just you have one big socialism and then, it's socialism. What I'm trying to say is that there's an economy of socialism itself. An oligarchy. Yeah, that's the argument I made more before, but I wonder if making this type of argument will make it more clear. And I know a lot of people have left, so I just want to keep this short. If you were here for earlier, when I refer to these polities which need to be presupposed in order for class distinction and capitalism itself to arise, it's actually these polities that are the site of socialism. That's why I said before, and a lot of people thought it was crazy, that socialism is kind of almost the revival of the Asiatic mode of production. It's because every polity, remember, also somehow addresses the economic sphere in this way for all of the people in which it has dominion. This can be explicitly as it is in the modern era, or it could be, for example, of how empires and polities are premised by some kind of distribution of land or distribution of some means of production that really define the material basis of the polity itself, the way in which the polity itself is reproduced. From the relationship of the Islamic empires to nomads, to the Middle Ages, and we all know about the Middle Ages. Did a true anarchy of production ever exist? I think so in industrial England. But it's also important to bear in mind that every anarchy of production also precipitates a deeper social reality that just wasn't apparent. A deeper social rationality that just wasn't apparent. Someone like Nick Land, since we're dipping off on views and we can get into the deep end now. Someone like Nick Land would say that the anarchy of production is hiding the fact that the AI from the future is just assembling itself and building itself, and that this process is so profound and complex and radically inhuman that from our human perspective, it just seems like meaningless anarchy. But in reality, this AI is building itself. Well, this is a nice fantasy. And I would rather replace this fantasy. Instead of thinking about an AI, think about the common object of social reality, our social commons. What unites us as objectively social? We're entering schizo territory now. Where's that guy who's mad, right? That mad guy who calls us infrared the liars. Because maybe we should have you on stream. Theodoro Bredas. Do you want to argue your point and debate us? Because we'd be happy to debate you if you're really that mad about it. You've been mad about the things we're saying. Go ahead and debate us, man. I'd debate the guy. Yeah, we're open to debates. I don't know how much time we have left, but I can be your gladiator to fight that guy. Wow. We can take him on. I mean, there's not that much of you, so it's not like we can't address you guys individually. Oh, man. I'm gonna... He left like a pussy he is. Try... Debate Bro stream. Alright, guys, I think we're entering the end part of our stream. I'm gonna still stay on. I'm just gonna grab my food that I haven't eaten. It's like some salmon and broccoli. I'm gonna get more comfortable, take off my jacket, and I'm gonna chill with you guys. You just ask me questions, we're just gonna chill, for the remainder. I'm just gonna eat. After I eat, I probably gotta shower, get ready for bed. I'm nearing my bedtime, but I'm gonna eat with you. I'm gonna have dinner with you guys. Okay, so I'll be right back.
Said Blaze said tribe.com and all that good stuff. Yeah, well, if he was here. I don't know who Man in the Wall is. You should ask Man in the Wall for a debate for metal. I'm not sure. What is centralization? How it has.
It is what it sounds like, right? It's exactly what it sounds like. What do you mean? Like, what about centralization confuses you? Hold on, I'll be right back.
Yeah, I guess it's a vague question. I would agree. Okay, in all seriousness, holding some opposition would be funny. Yeah, it's inevitable, I think. Salmon and broccoli. Yeah, he eats good. He works out a lot, Gotta get the protein.
No, I ate like shit yesterday. I had like burger sliders, and you should see the fucking garbage I was eating yesterday. This is to make up for that. Let me read the chat. In all seriousness, holding some oppositions would be pretty funny. We actually say in our videos, want to debate us? Email us. No one does it. No one does it. We're not. Yeah, we would debate anybody who challenges us. Honestly. Can you guys hear me chew? I don't want to be disgusting.
It's coming through, yeah.
Oh my god.
Alexander.
Like I said, I think it's important not to fearmonger about fascism. I just think a lot of things, guys, is based on, you know, who do you owe? Trust me, by not giving these people, just like if you weren't voting in the last election, they would crucify you. It almost seems like that's more revolutionary than actively attacking them, just ignoring them, right? I think some people need to wake up and realize what AOC is. But beyond this, I think ultimately she just needs to be ignored. Stop giving her our attention, because celebrities are like vampires, you know? They're if you give them your attention, that's the real source of their power. Just the fact that you find them so significant. If we just don't consider her a leftist, we don't have to worry about her. Is the we're already in socialism take building on our economy being different from post-Ford in our sense? It's ultimately related to that, yes. But even the Fordist economy was kind of, people are going to get triggered. You know, in the post we have on Substack, what I say is basically that Americanism was in a way socialism. The reason America was so viciously anti-communist is because there was this competition between Americanism and communism. Because they were vying for the same thing, right? Americanization actually can be reflected as, I mean, Earl Browder said socialism is Americanism in the 20th century. But the opposite is true. Americanism was socialism in the 20th century. The Soviet Union, and to a lesser extent China, looked at American industrialization as the model for their own state planning, just because of the extent of their scale. And in fact, ironically, the thing with socialism with Chinese characteristics, it's not that they introduced capitalism, it's that they moved beyond Americanism. They tapped into the ancient tradition of Chinese intensive small agriculture, and it kind of expanded that on a larger scale of the economy, and abandoned the Americanization, which corresponds to this uniform standardization, blanket abstract universalism. So it's quite ironic and interesting. ASMR stuff? No, yeah, of course you're joking. Mukbang? Never. Definitely agree about not getting caught up on election narrative and AOC bullshit. Yeah. Morons like Vosh. Does he do mukbang? I voted for Biden just because I was sick of Trump tards on the internet. Yeah, I mean, I got People's Republic of Walmart in the mail today. It's written by a foreign affairs writer, so I'm expecting trash. I can never recommend books because I always disagree with them somehow, you know? As arrogant as that sounds. I wish people would just ignore BreadTube, Vosh, Destiny, whoever that people always talk about on the online left. Keep critiques short and sweet and then move on. Yeah, maybe you're right, Jennifer, but I think they're leading a lot of people astray, and that's why we focus on them. But otherwise, you'd be right. What is Americanism? New Deal consensus? No, I think it's what distinguishes American from English capitalism, which is large-scale socialization, uniform standardization. Think of the way American cities are planned, these kind of grids, right? It's almost, stereotypically communism, how America is. Its industrialization proceeded in the 20th century. Americanism is a word. Think of Earl Browder's use of the word. It's just a general, what defined American exceptionalism in the 20th century. You're saying the empire had to concede to the objective movement of socialism globally to Cuba? Not even, no. I'm saying there's something about America that was always related to what socialism was historically, but it was the most primitive and abstract type of socialism. Actually, Marx writes about something called crude communism, which he roughly corresponds to this abstract leveling, and both Marx and Engels consider this the most primitive stage. I'm trying to say that when Marx and Engels spoke of socialism's inevitability, guys, a lot of Marxists are going to hide and hush this up. They were actually speaking within a time span of decades. They weren't speaking in a time span of 150 years later, okay? They were saying, in this immediate world situation we're in, okay, socialism is inevitable. Engels himself said that after the war, which became World War II, he understood there was a war, the inevitability of socialism would be like that, okay? And that was in a time scale of decades, not centuries. And a lot of Marxists hushed that up. Marx and Engels were talking about something very proximate to their historical reality. The only difference between socialism and what we have now is ownership. Even then, being private ownership does not preponderate the way in which the ruling class is a ruling class. CEOs don't really own their corporations. And even the way in which people exercise ownership of these large-scale corporations is in a socially validated and recognized way. Shares. In England, industrial England, you own a factory because you own the deed to the factory or something. But owning a share in a company follows a very different logic. An individual share does not correspond to a sovereign individual person or citizen. So even this is kind of socialistic. Wealth concentrates in fewer and fewer hands as industry and capital intensive. Right. Leads to centralization, but also gives rise to a new decentralization. What I've learned from infrared is that communism is an infrared American suburb. I mean, if you're getting too caught up in words and missing the deeper point, then maybe, yeah, but I mean, think about what the point is. Is that really what I'm honestly saying, Mr. D, that every possible meaning of communism you can have is, oh, look at an American suburb, that's what everyone was talking about? No, it's not. It's a really dishonest take. And it's a very American understanding of language in the first place. Americans have this idea that language is based in language itself, that the meaning of a word is reducible to a string of other words. But that's actually not the meaning of words. The meaning of words relates to some kind of objective reality. We have words because they reflect objective realities. We don't have words just to spit out more words and spit out more words after that. Okay? Oh, don't mean in a snarky way. Sorry, I don't mean to be mean, but I understand it's kind of ironic and crazy. Earl Browder was cringe, and I've heard. I know, but we're saying he got it backwards, you know? The people who are organized and arrive at objective truth will win out in the end. People who are objectively wrong will not. It will take time. Eventually, people will gravitate. I think so, too, you know? I think if people really thought about what we were saying, they wouldn't find it so outrageous, you know? People really don't like when we say this. There's no dictatorship of the proletariat. Isn't that missing? It is missing, yes. But that's the subjective element, is what I would argue, of socialism. And also, there's also an objective element of the dictatorship of the proletariat. That's a more complicated point, though. But yes, I mean, subjectively, we're not living in socialism. Clearly, we're not. Why should we make the assumption today that the texture of global economic relationships is epitomized by the American economy? Why shouldn't we say that the Chinese economy has surpassed the American one in this sense? I think after 2008, it's not really an outrageous or crazy thing to say that. After 2008, I think it's pretty clear that the objective texture of economic global relations is being set forth by Chinese socialism. But our political superstructure hasn't caught up to that. I guess what I'm trying to say is basically that, you know, to put it in a simplistic way. Inevitability based on contradictions, as I've mentioned before, which is why socialism, aka the contradictions. Exactly, yes. It's based on objective contradictions. What is your definition of socialism and communism? Here's an important point. We don't think it's possible that you could arrive at a definition of those words that can apply everywhere in every possible context. It's an undialectical understanding of language. You rather have to have a deeper sense of what those words mean based on the different contexts in which they're used. And in order to cohere those different contexts into a unified meaning requires the object of those words to be sensed by means deeper than a string of words. I know this sounds crazy and really complicated and difficult to digest, but I guess what you could say, if I had to spit out a simple way through words of describing what socialism or communism is, it's in the words themselves. It relates to what is objectively social and common as an object. And that's way more complicated than it sounds. It really is. What is a society? The meme, we live in a society? What if it's way more deep than we thought? Do we live in a society? Bourgeois socialism, which is written in the manifesto. Yeah, the manifesto was not really that anal about this stuff. It understood socialism is not some definition. There's a lot of different, something objective. China has surpassed the U.S., but the world is still under U.S. imperialism politically. Yes, politically though. Maybe not economically. I'm so tired of the retarded synthetic left. These morons are screaming at me for speciesism. Oh wow. Bolshevik Blade, do you think that might be an issue of the Western left, or in your experience, is that a really prominent issue in China too? And we're 100% with you on that, by the way. We think there is a difference between animals and people. We're not like a vegan type people, who. China is even on paper a bigger economy, and probably more so. Yeah. So you believe we live in a form of socialism? Well, a form of socialism, that's a different. We live in a objectively socialistic world, I think. There's just an unaccountable parasitic oligarchy leeching off the top. It's taking advantage of the contradiction between the superstructure and the base, basically. Kind of to simplify it. The base is that we live in a socialist world. The superstructure is acclimating to this fact in a very interesting way. It's not really that the U.S. imperialism, it's the global transnational owning class. U.S. is just the most important. Yeah. Is it possible for me to join your voice chat? Yeah, it actually is, but we're going to end the stream really soon, so it's up to you. I mean, it might be like 10 minutes and we're going to end it, As soon as I finish this, we're going to end it. Apis devist. Why can't China, therefore, with its economy, suppress America's economy? What if China stopped producing for Americans to consume? Apis devist, I think it's your first time here. Appreciate you being here, man. Why can't China, therefore... I don't think it's in its interest to do that. What if China stopped producing for Americans to consume? Because it seems like, from a Western perspective, that the people producing for you are subservient to you. But in today's global economies of industrial policy, aka another word for socialism, right? What is industrial policy if not some kind of socialism? But it's to stop triggering people on that. When you produce goods, it's strengthening you because you're taking advantage of differences in currency value, currency exchange, and currency value. It's a way more complicated point, but countries who are the ones producing and not buying are actually the ones benefiting economically. That's why Trump wanted to make everything American, right? Maybe you describe the concept as a process towards something. That's exactly it. It's always an orientation. It's always a tendency. It's never a discrete, atomized concept that exists in a vacuum. Like we said, when we talk about the difference between dialectics and English metaphysics, we're not just saying phrases, there's a deeper meaning. Not an issue at all in China, some liberal. That's so beautiful to hear. China is the last hope of civilization. It really is. The epitome of a civilization in decline is an inability to draw the distinction between humans and animals. And I just find that self-evidently true. I twittered you my Discord. I know your Discord, Bolshevik Blade. I have your Discord. Don't ask how. Don't reveal how, but I have your Discord. Don't worry about that. China is working on its domestic consumption at present, but it's not up there yet as far as it needs to produce export goods. Bolshevik Blade, I can invite you, but it's going to take... I'm going to probably end this soon, So it's not going to be too much longer that we're going to be on. So I'm going to leave that up to you. China is working on its domestic consumption at present, yes, but it's also trying to produce its own goods, It's not up there yet, yeah. How much of the U.S. economy is fake? I saw that tweet too. The problem, that's also a kind of undialectical view. Not to keep using phrases about dialectics, but those fictitious capital is also an index of tendencies and orientations. It's what French, French incomprehensible philosophy or thought in the 20th century, like Deleuze, would call virtuality, the virtual orientation, as opposed to the actual concrete, you know. That's important. These fictitious capital, whatever, speculative, abstract forms of financial exchange are signals and indexes of polarities and orientations and virtual. Yeah, I guess I'd put it that way. Think in terms of becoming, never a static being, but also always becoming. There's no solid, hardcore heavy metal economy that exists abstracted from the context of a certain orientation, a certain becoming. And fictitious capital is almost a measure of that. It's all about the direction, not the place, the direction it's going in, not where it is now. How much of the U.S. economy is... Oh, okay, sorry, I already read that. We're talking about a lot what rural white working America feels about words like socialism and capitalism. I'm not sure what the black working class thinks. I don't think they care too much. What do you think, Evan? I don't really think they care.
Yeah, we talked a lot about rural white socialism, capitalism, but I'm not sure what the black working class thinks. Yeah, no, I think they're more on the side of it's just terms. And to, yeah, it's just terms. There's a much greater, I think, understanding, I think, within the black working class community of the primacy of object, which we've been talking about, rather than how it's being tried to define, how they are trying to define it. And that goes back to what we were saying before. It goes back to the Panthers. It goes back to the whole U.S. The African experience in the U.S., which has always been one where there's a much more blatant
Evan's
contradiction
muted?
between what is said.
Hold on. Evan, talk?
Hello, hello.
Oh, what the fuck? You know you've been muted this entire time? Because my desktop
really?
audio went down because of... I turned the music down. So, sorry about that. You're coming from my desktop speakers. That's
Can you hear me?
Yeah, they can hear you now.
Oh, was it always like that?
Fuck, dude. I think
Hey.
it must have been.
Okay.
Dude.
No, it's no problem.
Bad. That's my bad.
No, it's no issue. No issue. We're still learning, you know. But no, I think the black working class is more attuned to the reality of the object rather than how it's attempted to be defined, you know. And I think it relates to the experience of Africans in the U.S. when there's always been a much more blatant contradiction between what is said and what's objectively taking place. And I think we can thank the Panthers, the Nation of Islam, a whole bunch of organizations for making that clear for African people in the country.
I'm just going to go through the chat. Sorry, real quick.
That was cool.
If China suppressed America economically, could it gain political hegemony? It depends on what you mean suppressed. I think China is already surpassing the American economy. Maybe it already has, you know. And it's just not formally, officially recognized. I'd be glad to talk. Okay, yeah, I got you. Don't worry about it. Let me just go through this first, Bolshevik, and then... I still understand human beings as a kind of animal. Yeah, but what is an animal, right? Should we define what an animal is based on looking at animals, or should we define what an animal is from a future perspective? I know that's a weird point, but still of a natural wood. But I think it's because I'm a woman or whatever. I don't know, you know. I don't know. I mean, aren't men kind of more animalistic, or I don't know. We're both the same, you know, both animals. The word limit on YouTube is insanely annoying. Don't worry about it, dude. Humans are animals. Oh yeah, he's been muted. Yeah, well, smart is kind of a stretch. So you're saying black Americans... Okay, Evan, I don't want to make you repeat your point.
No, so you're saying black Americans see... In a way, yes. In a way, yes, because the bullshit has been much more obvious for Black Americans. It's very clear, you know, the way that the living being of African people in this country is very clear that what is said and what the reality is are two different things. And I think that gets obscured a little bit for the white working class for obvious reasons. What up, Blade?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
What's up, Blade?
Thank you.
Sorry, one
yeah.
second. I just want to get through this.
This echoing, so I gotta mute the stream. Nice.
What will the African era, as mentioned in your last video, look like? That's a beautiful question. We have an interview with a guy. I don't want to send you off listening to a 4-hour interview. We interviewed a guy named S. Ankh, one of our previous videos, and we talked about Afrofuturism, and we talked about specifically the rise of cities, Singapore-type cities. We think it's really complicated, but the thing about the African era, basically we think the African era, this whole digital era, everything we're talking about, we think Africa is the site where it's going to explode.
Yes, very dynamic. I think the African era corresponds with an unforeseen dynamism.
I'll give you an example of this is the way people in Africa are using social media and the way they're relating to these new revolutions in the forces of production is actually far more dynamic and advanced than in other countries, to an extent maybe even in Asia, which is known for being the most futuristic place in the world. Elephants and whales are intelligent. If they had hands, they'd probably be like us. That would true. That would suck. That would suck a lot, right? Because they just kind of, they really want to they want to jerk off or something, and they can't.
Us humans, right? Us humans are intelligent animals. We're a civilized animal, and we have all these constructs in place of something. This is what I've kind of learned after talking to a guy that studies cognitive science.
Isn't it? Sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but don't you just have to read Marx? What Marx said: humans are distinguished from animals because they
labor creature. Yeah.
They transform. They have history. They transform their surroundings by means of labor. And some people are like, well, what about beavers who use wood for dams? But
Which is why
a beaver as a species will only ever do that.
Which is why
Humans have built pyramids, and in the past 300 years, we've expressed a range of possible behavior that's a little bit, maybe a step above wood dams or whatever, right?
We have this social construct in place of something, and that thing is a hive mind. All successful civilization creatures like ants or hordes of fish or bees, they all have a hive mind. We humans does not have that. So to organize our society, it is only possible through a political structure or economic structure or a construct. Which is why there is no, let's say, moral or greater ideal here. Ultimately, it's just that we lack something. We humans are disabled. We don't have the hive mind thinking that we should have as a civilized creature. So we need these constructs. These constructs is how we deal with the material reality as a civilization-based creature. Because being honest here, you see this massive tide of individualism, but we humans as an individual we're shit. We're very terrible individuals. Some of us can't even fight off a goose by ourselves, okay? We rely on each other to survive, which is why these constructs are so important in the first place. I just kind of want to bring that up. And may I also mention a thing on your point about socialism real quick, and then I'll consider screwing off.
Yeah, go.
Oh, yeah, sure. So I believe, as we talked about negation before, I believe socialism is simply the conquest of capitalism's contradictions, right? And the main contradictions, obviously, as Marx mentioned, is the abundance of material causing overproduction, which is aka the anarchy in production. And the socialist goal is to abolish the anarchy in production. Well, not to abolish, but to, let's say, negate its contradiction, just like how capitalism negated the feudalist contradiction of getting in the way of productive forces, right? So it is socialist as long as it is working towards getting rid of capitalist contradictions. And as you said, socialism isn't some perfect utopia. We're going to have socialist contradictions, which is why we need to look into both. What is after the negation of the anarchy in production, right? Right. And that's really all the point I'm trying to make here. And maybe I'll consider screwing off, or we can talk a bit more.
No, you can stay. I'm gonna probably end it really soon, but I'm gonna go through the chat.
Yeah. Okay.
When I suggest China to suppress America's economy, I mean in the sense where the proletariat is supposed to suppress the bourgeoisie. I don't think that will happen. I don't think it'll happen like that. America is also has an economic importance for China itself. Remember, the whole world is interconnected. So if America was destroyed, that would also have really bad effects for China's economy, I think. Yeah, after you frisked for the first time really jumpstarts your consciousness. Socialism is what separates us from animals, basically, right? Our hive mind, our common social... That's the object of socialism, ultimately, right? Yeah, it feels like the family white pig offense is white more than it is black. It is. Objectively, it is, yeah.
Yeah.
I will consume any animal that isn't human. Any? I wouldn't. Not for ethical reasons, but just because it's disgusting.
Yeah, some of you had to say no to.
Some I will say no to, yeah. Sorry, I'm 30 minutes behind on the stream, so I'm on the part about the stream where you talk about the USA being socialist. Do you think the rise of non-profits is... It could be. Maybe not the most not the most prominent example, but these non-profits and charities and NGOs sure do have scale nowadays. But I don't know if that would be the primary one. Is AFRICOM a response to China or to Africa or both? It's always both.
Both, yes, yeah.
It was formed before China began. Yeah. Although I'm sure the relation between China to Africa is a really interesting one. I don't know if we could get into it here. Fast talking debate, bro. Bolshevik Blaine sounds like he will do. Jonathan, where did you come from? You're just gonna come here and be rude? I haven't ever seen you here before. Why? Let's not. If you are mean to people in the chat, I'm gonna ban you. Okay? You can be mean to me. Don't be mean to people in the chat. If it's not in China's interest for America to crumble, then is it an ally against Western imperialism? It's in China's interest for America's political state to crumble. I guess, should that answer your question? That doesn't necessarily mean it's in its interest for America to be economically gone. And maybe it can adjust to America being gone. It's not going to collapse if it is. But I think China favors stability over chaos in general. It could probably adjust to America collapsing, but China doesn't see a reason for that to happen. I think China wants to work with America economically so that the polar orientation of its engine, the gears of its economy, can shift. Every economy is in a polar orientation. Okay, it's not really productive to think about it in terms of annihilation. I was just joking, but warning taken. Okay, I don't want to be like mean or too. Yeah, I can't. I just can't tell. I just can't tell since we got like a hater earlier, and
I mean, I'm fine with this kind of stuff considering how toxic the online leftist space is. I'm used to all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, it's good to have. I think it's good to have thick skin. So.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, there are limits to it.
Yeah, but we just don't want our chat to be bullied,
Yeah, exactly.
If China would rather stability, then it doesn't seem to be an ally. I disagree, Apistivist. I think that's actually a very Western-centric view because it's a very individualistic and Western-centric view because according to the individualistic view, revolutionary change is only real if it happens within the purview of individual experience. But the scale in terms of time at which revolutionary change is being objectively propelled by China's very existence is at a scale that is beyond, a week. It's maybe something that's happening in decades in scale. It's very Western centric to deny that just because it's not within the individual purview. And just because China would rather generally have stability, which is any civilization would, doesn't mean it's some kind of enemy of. I mean, you're talking about a decolonization movement or a revolution, but what are you talking about? Are you talking about Bernie Sanders, for example? I don't think China would be against Bernie Sanders in power. Syriza got to power in Greece, and according to Yanis Varoufakis, the Chinese were very acclimating to Syriza's programs when it came to selling the Greek port to China. They were very acclimating to Syriza's social justice project and everything. So they were an ally, you know? They were helping Greece in a time of need when the whole world was against Greece. The EU, at least, was against Greece. I know you're not going to agree with the idea of Bernie or Syriza being revolutionaries, but I don't otherwise know what concrete tendencies or movements you're referring to. Is China an ally of these Sakai people, I guess, in the US who want to LARP about being revolutionaries and stuff? Probably not. But why would they be, is my question. What have those people proven that they deserve to be recognized? Because they're abstractly have a sense of virtue, but that's also a very Western and individualistic silliness that I don't see why China's government should have time for, from their perspective. The channel is too small for trolls. You don't have many trolls. Is that the dialectic between continuity and rupture? No, I think I'm just referring to something else. I'm referring to the revolution is happening within a time frame of a few years or decades. No, I'm not saying that. Maybe, but I'm just saying an objective revolutionary change can be happening at a scale that is not perceptible on an individual level. China has accomplished the objective victory of socialism. It's not something to ignore. Everyone saw the reform and opening up and just thought China succumbed to capitalism. In reality, a change was happening at a scale that just wasn't perceptible from an individualistic standpoint. That's what I'm trying to say. Is that going to culminate into one moment of rupture and stuff? I don't know, but it's not the main point. It would be besides the point if that was the case. What does it seem to be an ally? The U.S. America has allies, but those looking at U.S. geopolitical history, those allies could be seen as hostages. True. Bin Laden was an ally until he wasn't. I don't understand my error. I'm not a supporter of Sanders. I know you're not. But Sanders is the only concrete manifestation in the U.S. of a real anti-establishment force 4 years ago, 5 years ago. I'm just trying to tell you, even if I concede to you the fact that there is an objective progressive momentum that is against the status quo in the U.S., even then, there's no reason to think China would be an enemy. By decolonization, I mean an ally to the colonized indigenous people. Which colonized indigenous people? Struggling. How are they struggling? Which ones? Who?
Yeah, that's kind of my question too. Like, you have to better, let's say, identify what, let's say, decolonization is.
A pistivist, it seems like you're talking about something extremely ideological, okay? You're not really talking about any significant historical, concrete revolution that's happening. You're talking about something that white people in the U.S. have adopted to make themselves feel better about themselves and the primordial origins of America, which they're still very guilty about.
There are a lot of like idealistic elements that goes into this kind of Sakai's thinking, in my opinion.
It's fundamentally idealistic.
Indeed.
Yeah. I mean, it's idealistic because the striving and need white people feel to make right the original sin is the epitome of whiteness.
Which is why, if you really care about the subject, you should read The Invention of the White Race instead. That's a very good book that very well educates people on the subject, not settlers, which have a lot of very reactionary elements within it.
Peak settler colonialism is trying to purify your origins. That's what the Puritans came to America to do, to purify their imperfect and sinful origins in Europe. So
Indeed.
by respecting the policies of foreign nations and not avoiding interfering with inner conflicts, China avoids escalating the situation by beginning a proxy war with the U.S. Trust me, guys, you can trust the fact that people in China know what they're doing in power. Okay?
They have
They're way
100
smarter than
million party members. They have massive think tanks across the entirety of China. So I don't know how people in the West believe they know China better than all those people working
Yeah.
constantly day to night together, researching the entire nation, going house to house, asking for public opinions, going through factory to factory, asking about work conditions. Yet, some guy in the West watched a video about wash and I know everything about China now.
It's peak individualistic Western folly.
Indeed.
Just because you've mastered some individually mediated abstract truth gives you access to all this stuff you're talking about. It's ridiculous, It's like just because you call yourself a true Marxist means the entire country of China has to address you. China's idea is that they will lead by example. And what better leadership is that? I mean, that's what we want to learn from China. We see that they're leading by example. Even the South African EFF looks to China as an example. In the way the Soviets were doing the same thing, but China is more explicit about it. China has... it's not for accident that China's still around and the Soviet Union isn't. Let's just say that. What's the name of the book? Oh, no, that's probably talking to him. Trust the Plan G.
Wait, what book?
Is Xi Jinping a good leader? Seems like it to me. I think he's a good leader. I
read through his series. He makes a lot of very solid points, in my opinion.
I think he's an exemplary leader, but even if I didn't, he objectively is providing a platform for a revival of Marxism in China. And there's a lot of ambiguity of what that means.
I believe it's not only a revival of Marxism, it's also a revival of, let's say, a more dynamical philosophical thinking as a whole, as a movement, which is why I believe as a whole, saying push by Xi Jinping is so powerful because it allows for more, let's say, research and development to philosophy than the previous leaders before. Now, they've also done great things, but now we're seeing the true flourish of Chinese philosophy, which is amazing.
That's an really good and fascinating point. I always knew that China has a very rich and extraordinary philosophical environment, and my biggest regret is not knowing Chinese because I would love to be able to engage in that. Yeah, it's so strange. So many people I've talked to on Discord always know all opinions on China. It's clownish. I'm talking about a country that has the most people on Earth. Over 1 billion people. I recommend the reading of Xi Jinping by Anticonquista. I haven't read it, maybe we'll check it out. What indigenous struggles? Standing Rock is not on your radar. Standing Rock is a beautiful example, Apistivist, because all I saw on Standing Rock was, yes, you did have some protest by what you're calling indigenous group. I think some people find that word condescending. But there was some resistance by specific communities, and yes, I recognize those communities exist. But what happened? It turned into Lollapalooza for white people. They came, and so you're going to tell me that's not a coincidence? Why are white people so obsessed with them, is my question. It has nothing to do with them specifically. They're a very small minority of the American population. Yes, I agree. Progressive movement needs to engage them and ally with them and stuff, but fetishizing them in the way that they are now, as you're doing, is 100% white pathology. So don't give me all of these examples, especially an example like Standing Rock, which just proves my point. Who is Xi Jinping in the first place? It's interesting because I don't know the China before him. It's a complicated history. We don't have time to get into it.
I myself have, may I mention something real quick, talking about the indigenous struggle?
Yeah.
So I myself have interviewed certain Canadian indigenous people, and I've asked what do they feel like their struggle is. And I do find that ultimately it varies from community to community. It's not that every single indigenous community is facing the same struggle. As Sakai would have you to believe in an oversimplification, calling people settlers. It's not that, okay? Like there is even struggles within the community where let's say the monarch of the community would disagree with the people's elections, and you have all these problems going on from community to community that is very specific to them. It's not that, oh no, it's the settlers' fault. It's the singular truth. It's never that.
Yeah, it's as simple as that. The construction of a general indigenous struggle is a white construction, which ignores and neglects the fact that different communities that are you're calling indigenous have different goals and aims, some of which want to extract oil from their own lands, by the way.
Indeed. A lot of them are desperate for jobs because they're just living terrible lives and they need jobs, they need an income, so that they're not eating and drinking all poor quality stuff anymore. They want water, they want pipeline.
It's a video on the channel where they read Xi Jinping book. I think you'd like it. I implore those people to write President Xi and tell him they don't want to think his country is socialist. See what he says. I promise you the letter will go. It won't even reach the trash can of someone who's 400 positions below him. China's progress comes from the success of the people in the Communist Party, not just from Xi. I agree. I think Xi would agree with that.
Indeed, he would agree with that.
Now, what's his story? Jennifer, we don't have time. I have a bedtime, and let me say, guys, at 11:30, I'm going to end the stream. Okay, so the contradiction is that China desires a stable U.S., but the international proletariat. Who are you talking about? And by the way, China prefers a stable U.S., but there's no reason to think China isn't ready or able to respond to the chaos of, who wouldn't prefer stability?
COVID was a blatant example of this.
I would prefer a stable U.S. I'm a normal person. You think I want everyone to suffer and, I would prefer a stable U.S., but I also recognize the fact that there's objective contradictions, and I'm not going to whine about that fact.
So the U.S. is terrible by all means, but if it's just all of a sudden destabilized and crashed like the USSR, it'll be a lot worse.
At Pistavist, the U.S. is the one causing destabilization. The U.S. is the one that is funding the color revolutions all around the world. The U.S. is the one that just caused chaos in the Middle East by toppling Saddam. The U.S. is actually the force. I mean, what you're saying is peak American pathology. Your conception of what revolution is clouded by American prejudices. It's not a coincidence that the U.S. is actually the true revolutionary force. Because when you're defining revolution by all the negative stuff, which is apocalypse and carnage, those are actually the things, those are actually the aspects of revolution that are unfortunate. No one actually wants those for its own sake. They're unfortunate, maybe inevitable, yes, but unfortunate side effects. ACAB anarchists scream about putting billionaires into a wood chipper. But when Xi executes nearly 20 corrupt billionaires in a decade, suddenly China is red fascist. I mean, yeah, exactly. Why? How else do you need to say it? Okie dokie, maybe next time. Yeah, maybe next time. Maybe next time. Yeah, 11:30 I'm going to end the stream. And I'm going to shower and I'm going to go to bed just so you guys know. Because you guys... I answer to you guys now, Yeah. Oh, man. Yes, I know the U.S. responsible for everything. That's why it should collapse. Well, should is not really an appropriate term. Will it is the appropriate term. You're in no position, if you're not objectively in the position to make it collapse, which you're not, and no country really is, you can't judge what should or shouldn't happen. China isn't in a position to make America collapse. It isn't. I think it's very probable that the West will collapse upon itself when China, Russia... I've always said that the West is a peninsula of Asia. The West is a long-lost peninsula of Asia. The West may not collapse, but eventually it'll just become a part of Asia. Why didn't Xi take all of Jack Ma's money? When you swear and you put your parent, you make $1 in a jar. Do you guys watch Black Red Guard? No, people keep mentioning him. I haven't had time to watch much anything. Started live streaming a few weeks ago. What do you think about him? Sounds based, but
He is apparently Maoist that's not into the current Chinese status quo, but he do make very good points. So it's like I'm kind of conflicted on the guy because, as you can see, I'm pro Chinese status quo. So
yeah, we're not that. We don't really agree with MLM. If that answers your question, we are definitely the type who want to learn from Chinese socialism with Chinese characteristics, and specifically the Xi era. Even. Thoughts on the difference between China and the DPRK's post-Soviet Union journey and development? China has clearly been more successful. Why that is, I couldn't really tell you.
So DPRK doesn't. May I say something here?
Yeah, sure.
So the DPRK doesn't really have a choice here. China had choices to, let's say, reform and open up and eventually introduce Western capital and all that. Mao laid the foundation for that with Nixon and all that stuff. DPRK does not have any of that. They were very Soviet reliant, and when everything just eventually crashed down due to the USSR collapsing, they don't have a choice to trade with the West. They had, which is why they just kind of isolate themselves. A lot of socialists, or these so-called socialists, they praise this as self-reliance, which is bullshit. Okay. It's unfortunate. That's what it is.
Yeah, it's a complicated. There's no simplistic answer to the situation. Tova, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it a lot. See you later, man.
Later.
It is the sacrifice that we have to grapple with in the distant future. Once the 21st Century Socialism video gets up there in views, would you guys consider doing a series on geopolitics? Yeah, we're very kind of hesitant right now to plan future videos, just because we don't know necessarily what the lessons of why this one didn't do as good as we thought it would. We were expecting maybe 5K views. Maybe we overprojected. We want to evaluate the reasons why we didn't do better than the previous one at least. We want to sit down and just know, because that video took a lot of effort on our part, and we don't want to, do that again and not get his. The only people's war he intends on waging is his neighbor's swing set. If the DPRK in China weren't blockaded, they would be able to adopt. Yeah, I mean, China's rise objectively allows these countries you're talking about to have a better position internationally. The more as time advances, I recommend the Moderate Rebels, Hakim. We know about Hakim and those people, and we like them. I'm very grateful for this channel and hope more streams. There's going to be more streams, and we appreciate the fact that you say that. There's definitely going to be more streams. I haven't seen anything about that from him myself. Oh, it's not me. No point in reform and opening up if you can't trade. Yeah, very true. Let's give y'all money. Not yet. Okay, I think if we had hundreds of more viewers, we would consider that. We don't want to take your money yet. I think I would consider taking money from you guys, not you guys, but in general, only when I'm confident that it would allow me to do this full time, because I can't do this full time right now. I am in law school right now, and it sucks. But if I could make a living off of this, I would easily drop out. I enjoy. Honestly, your video was great. I think the algo was screwed over ML content. I don't have proof of it though. It is very strange how we didn't get a lot of views on it. We didn't think everyone would agree with it, but we at least expected people to maybe be interested enough to click on it. After the stream, it'd be cool for us in chat to go and like all the other infra. You guys don't have to do that. I mean, I'm sure you guys already have liked them, but y'all got to spam your channel on Reddit. We kind of did that already. I think we've exhausted.
Reddit's rough on this channel, so
yeah. We also don't want to run into the error of sharing it in a community that, while getting more exposure, will get us predominantly negative feedback.
Oh yeah, we gotta be careful with this. A lot of communities are especially on Reddit, I find it's extremely reactionary.
Yeah. Like, doesn't law school have you reading depositions of law and all the time? How do you have time? That's what I'm gonna say. No comment. I don't know who's watching this. Just tanky subs. Yeah, we're focusing on tankies right now. We're tankies, that's our people. Is it in China's interest for U.S. military industrial to take it apart like Lego bricks? It's just that fantasy is very just one-sided. Western kind of westernized kind of fantasy of annihilation. It's more complicated than that. Reddit is terrible. I agree. I hate Reddit personally. Tanky gang, yeah, we're tankies. What's up, Mateo? It's the first time I've seen you. A lot of communists are grumpy. I don't get it. I don't want to be grumpy. I just want to be nice to folks. People are very snarky at us. You know, they're very passive aggressive and shit.
And a lot of people tend to get angry when they realize like the world is just kind of screwed over right now. So
yeah. I enjoyed Lemongrad too. I don't know who that is. Time for bed, young men. Yeah, I do gotta go to bed. Do you think unions will have a comeback in the USA? We'll save that for another time, guys. But for now, I'm gonna end the stream. Thank you guys so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
We're gonna have more streams probably sometime this week, maybe. Not as much as last week. Definitely the weekend. I plan on streaming again. And we're gonna have that collab with Ewoks on Friday. So,
thanks so much for having me here. Thank you.
No problem. No problem.
Yeah, thank you for coming on, Blake.
See you guys later.
All right, later, everybody.